I know that yesterday we, Commissioner Villalobos informed us that this would be her last day, and we had some remarks. But I think that Commissioner Villalobos' service has been so significant that I actually want to again formally thank and honor her on her last day of service to the City Planning Commission. I take comfort in the fact that this is not her last day of service to the people of New York City. We thank you for your work, and the word that comes to mind, Michelle, if I might, is how passionately committed you are to fairness and equity in land use, but in all facets of government interaction with the people of New York City. Since you were first appointed to the commissioner by then public advocate and now our mayor, Bill de Blasio, in March 2010, all New Yorkers, but most especially our most vulnerable residents, are benefiting from your service. You bring your deep experience advancing economic and social justice programs and developing and running affordable housing and social service programs to the Commission's intense and regular discussions about planning and development across our many and diverse neighborhoods. You are such a passionate advocate for public engagement. I love the fact that you always probe both city planning staff members and private applicants about the extent of public outreach on all development projects. You properly insist on information about what kind of efforts have been made to get community feedback, both before and all throughout the public review. And this is so critical to ensuring that any project not only makes sense, but is the best that it can be. And I know I speak for the other commissioners that we will take up your mantle on insisting upon this facet. Now, while we commissioners sometimes disagree on both policy and particular projects, that is absolutely healthy. We learn from these lively discussions, we make better decisions. But Michelle, there has never been a moment when you have been anything less than fully gracious and collegial to other commissioners and also to the city planning staff who work so hard to support us as commissioners. And I thank you for that. I particularly want to call out this extraordinary traveling exhibit that I had the pleasure of seeing, entitled Undesign the Red Line, by a group called Designing the We. And you and the Fifth Avenue Committee that you so ably lead helped bring this exhibit to the Old American Can Factory in Gowanus in 2019. This show was an interactive history of redlining. That's a polite term for the racist land use policies that have been advanced by our government. And this exhibit was absolutely invaluable in helping us unpack entrenched policies as we fight to get institutionalized racism out of land use, including through the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan and our activities across the city. So Michelle, thank you for your service on this commission and more broadly, your lifelong service to this city. I hate the English term goodbye because it has embedded in it a sense of finality. And I far prefer how we say goodbye in the language, in the mother tongue, Michelle, that you and I share, which is hasta pronto, see you soon, because it holds out the hope, the optimism that we will be seeing each other again and hopefully in person soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's very, very kind of you and humbling. And I'll just say that I have full confidence in the Commission's ability to bring some of the perspectives and questions that I have brought to the Commission. As I said yesterday, it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve with all of you. You know, as you noted, I bring all of my experience and my day-to-day experience to the conversation, and I think I've always been very proud, honestly, to be a bridge between community and government, and between government and community. And I think it's at the same time having the lens and the focus on advancing economic and racial justice. And I think that will ultimately lead to a better city for all New Yorkers. And certainly it's bittersweet to be leaving the commission on the same day that in Washington we're inaugurating our first female and woman of color vice president, and having a really new chapter, an important new chapter in the country's history with Joe Biden being inaugurated as president. So I wish you all well, and as you said, hasta pronto, hasta pronto.
So with that, I will turn it over to, will it be you, Ryan, to kick off the proceedings?
Certainly, I will give our usual information about verbal testimony, which may be provided online through the NYC Engage portal or by calling in on your telephone. If you wish to speak and plan to access the hearing online, please register online through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. A link to join the hearing is on the landing page after you register. Please do not close the landing page without first clicking on the link. If you are accessing the hearing via phone and wish to speak, you must first register with the dial-in participant hotline at the numbers listed on the screen. If one of the numbers is listed or is busy, please try another. The meeting ID is 618-237-7396. The participant ID, just press pound to skip that, and the password is the numeral 1. The phone number is also posted on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. Please note that whether you're accessing the meeting online or by phone, you must register if you want to speak. Please also know that your testimony will be audio only. The commissioners will hear you, but will not be able to see you. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be notified and granted temporary speaking privileges by staff, so please listen closely for your name to be called. If you're accessing the hearing online, your name will be called from the list of registered speakers. Once your name has been called, you will be given the temporary ability to unmute yourself, and you should see a notice on your screen allowing you to unmute your microphone. If you're accessing the hearing via phone, your name will be called from the list of registered speakers. Once your name has been called, you will be given the temporary ability to unmute yourself. You do this by pressing *6 to unmute your phone. Please note that muting and unmuting registered speakers may take a moment, so please give us your patience. For those accessing the hearing through the online live stream who have not yet registered to speak, but decide that they wish to speak during the hearing, you must register first through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. It is not possible to testify through the online live stream without having first registered. For those accessing the hearing via phone who have not yet registered to speak but wish to do so, you also must first register to speak through the dial-in participant hotline that I described a moment ago. It is not possible to testify via telephone without her first having registered. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes and speak clearly into the microphone. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials are accorded the courtesy of jumping to the front of the line and are not limited to 3 minutes. If translation services are being used, the time will be extended to 5 minutes. And if an applicant team with 3 or more speakers wishes to make a team presentation, the team will generally be allowed a total of 10 minutes. The chair will announce when the time limit is reached, at which point your microphone will be muted. Please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Please make sure that if you are watching the proceedings via live stream, that the live stream is muted before you begin your testimony. Otherwise, you will hear an echo. If you wish to submit written testimony, it should be submitted to the Department of City Planning. The mailing and email address can be found on our website, planning.nyc.gov. And lastly, please note that the remote public hearing and all testimony provided is being recorded.
And with that, let us begin the public hearing testimony.
Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, all. This is the City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal. Today is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. I will now call the roll. Chair Lago.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Burney.
Here.
Commissioner Capelli.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo. Commissioner De La Use.
Here.
Commissioner Dweck. Commissioner Dweck.
I believe that Commissioner Dweck may not be available for portions of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
Commissioner Rapashot.
Here.
The quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, January 6th, 2021.
The minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved.
The next item is scheduling. On calendars numbers 1 through 9, we have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021 for a remote public hearing to be held through the NYC Engage portal.
And on the resolutions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolutions are adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the reports section on page 280. Reports. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 10 and 11. CD 14, calendar number 10. C 180496ZMK, calendar number 11. N 180497ZRK. In the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 1620 Cortelliu Road rezoning. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 10 and 11, Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Use.
I'm going to vote yes, and I hope that the applicant is able to follow through on the commitments to the community made specific to the supermarket and option 1 MIH. Thank you.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
I fully support the notion of a rezoning here to encourage the production of affordable housing. But these considerations always require a balance between issues concerning neighborhood context. I think we heard very clearly from this community during the hearing that this is a context that is challenged by the R7D zoning that is the subject of this application. So for the reasons I expressed at the follow-up session, I'm going to vote no on this one.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapashot.
Yes.
The favorable report has been adopted on calendars number 10 and 11. Calendar number 12, Borough of Brooklyn, CD 17, N 210194HKK, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the East 25th Street Historic District. On the adoption of calendar number 12 for referral to the City Council, Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Use,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapashot.
Yes.
Favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 12. Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 13 and 14. CD1, calendar number 13, C190517ZMQ, calendar number 14, N190518ZRQ. In the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 42-01 28th Avenue rezoning. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 13 and 14. Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
I'm pleased that our report reflects the discussion that we had at our follow-up meeting in which several of us felt firmly that option 2 should be removed in this case. That discussion is now reflected in our report. I hope the city council follows through, and I vote yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampashad.
Recused.
Noted. Favorable reports have been adopted on calendars number 13 and 14. Calendar number 15, Borough of Queens, CD7, C210005 PCQ. In the matter of an application for the site selection and acquisition of property concerning the Department of Sanitation, Queens 7 parking lot. For favorable report on calendar number 15, Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 15. Borough of Queens, calendar number 16, CD1, M180175A, MMQ. In the matter of an application for a minor modification of a previously approved city map amendment concerning the St. Michael's Park elimination. For a favorable report on calendar number 16, Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 16. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 17, 18, and 19. CD3, calendar number 17, N210168 RCR. Number 18, N210169 RCR. Number 19, N210105 RCR. In the matter of applications for the grant of certifications for adoption on calendars number 17, 18, and 19. Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampashad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendars numbers 17, 18, and 19. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 20, CD1, N210110ZAR. In the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning 262 Brighton Avenue for adoption on calendar number 20. Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
Favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 20. Borough of Staten Island, calendars number 21, 22, and 23. CD2, calendar number 21, N 170032 ZAR, calendar number 22, N 170033 ZAR, calendar number 23, N 170034 ZAR, in the matter of applications for the grant of authorizations concerning 300 Ocean Terrace for adoption on calendars numbers 21, 22, and 23. Chair Lago,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner De Luz,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
yes,
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendars number 21, 22, and 23. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 291. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 24, CD2, C200356 PPK. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the disposition of city-owned property concerning 69 Adams Street.
There will be a 10-minute team presentation, and the team will be comprised of Sandra Milanowicz, Brooke Weiserick, Rob Holbrook, Christina Rausch, Jamie Horton, and Stephen Hayes.
Good morning to the chair and to the commission. My name is Sandra Milanowicz, and I'm a planning coordinator at the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services. DCAS is the applicant on this land use application per city charter terms of disposition actions. And I'll now hand it over, the presentation over to New York City Economic Development Corporation as the applicant representative to present the proposed project. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning, Chair Lago and commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity to present the 69 Adams Street project on behalf of the city. My name is Brooke Weiserick, and I'm Assistant Vice President in the Land Use Department at EDC. I will present the proposed land use application and speak to the commission's questions related to technical planning and land use. I'm joined today by a panel of project reps. As we said, Christina Rausch and Jamie Horton from a real estate group will speak to project goals. I'm also joined by Stephen Hayes, who's here representing the developer, 69 Adams LLC, or the Rabsky Group. Rabsky is the intended purchaser of the air rights subject to this land use approval. Stephen will speak on behalf of the developer related to program and community engagement. And finally, Ihab El Sharif from Fisher McCoy is the project architect and can answer any questions related to design as part of our panel. Could I have slide 4, please? The requested action is the disposition of a negative easement to the development site corresponding to the sale of approximately 98,446 square feet of development rights from 2 city-owned lots used by the New York City Department of Transportation for commercial office use on the adjacent receiver site. The other requested action is a light and air easement above the Manhattan Bridge roadway to serve the residential portion of the building, which sits above the commercial base. These actions will be effectuated via zoning lot merger and memorialized in a Zelda or zoning lot development agreement. The transfer development rights on the developer's lot will be restricted to commercial office use only. On this slide, we're showing a side-by-side of the as of right and with action or ULURP scenarios. Both buildings are the same height, which is the max height for this district. If ULURP is not approved, the developer plans to build a residential project with their as of right floor area, since he owns their parcel. If this ULURP is approved, the project will additionally include this commercial base and the allowance of the light and air easement and inclusion of public benefits that Rabsky otherwise would not pursue. Next slide, please. The site is generally bounded by Pearl Front and Adams Streets in the Dumbo mixed-use district. First, on the generating lots, these are the lots 15 and 17 shown here, city-owned, located directly beneath the Manhattan Bridge and as such have limited development potential. The lots are used by DOT for bridge maintenance and operations. The transfer of development rights to the Rapsky-owned lots allows the city to unlock the value of these development rights, which otherwise would be left unbuildable, as there are no other feasible receiving sites on the block. The equivalent of 1.5 FAR development rights for commercial use will remain on the city-owned lots to accommodate future agency needs. As to the receiving lots, this is lot 4, just lot 4. The proposed development lot will utilize the transferred commercial floor area in a mixed-use building. That building will also include 225 residential units. Stephen will speak to that program later. There was a question yesterday in the review session about the city occupying some commercial space. The city has no intention to tenant the new space. There's no specific tenanting plan in place right now. In addition, the as-of-right scenario would not include any commitments for local benefits made by the developer as part of this project, including local and MWBE hiring commitments. Next slide, and I'll pass it to Christina Rausch.
Thank you. In terms of history of this project, in the fall of 2017, EDC, on behalf of the city, released a request for proposals for the purchase of development rights on the city lots. The goal of the disposition is to maximize commercial office development in alignment with the city's longstanding policy of encouraging commercial activity in areas outside of the Manhattan core. The city has historically utilized zoning and land use to promote commercial office development in the outer boroughs, including, for example, the 2004 downtown Brooklyn rezoning. The Dumbo area and surrounding neighborhoods of the Navy Yard and downtown Brooklyn, collectively known as the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, has been a growing cluster of creative and technology employment. This RFP sought projects that contributed more commercial office space to accommodate this growing employment. Consistent with EDC policy, this project is required to commit to contracting with minority and women-owned businesses and to local hiring. With the current COVID crisis, the goal for outer borough commercial is more applicable than ever. With the shift to remote work and a desire to be able to work closer to home, this project will create office space closer to the residential heavy Brooklyn neighborhoods. Next slide, please. This project seeks to activate the otherwise undevelopable floor area on the city-owned lots into an asset in support of city policies to grow outer borough employment centers, support mixed-use neighborhoods, and connect underserved residents with employment and business opportunities. With the increasing residential growth in Brooklyn over the last decade and related need for office space, downtown Brooklyn's development is creating a new destination for a wide variety of businesses. The Brooklyn Tech Triangle in particular has seen growth in office use over the past 10 plus years and is becoming the city's largest tech cluster outside of Manhattan. As a primarily residential neighborhood, Dumbo has a smaller daytime population, so there's less foot traffic on the street and fewer people to support local retail during the day. The employees that eventually come to occupy this new space in the proposed development will help to activate the area during the daytime. And lastly, the project will help to address the needs for employment opportunities that were outlined in the latest Community District 2 Needs Assessment, which call for connecting locals, especially NYCHA residents, with the increasing economic activity in CD2. The project will create a pipeline for access to local jobs by partnering with NYCHA. Next slide. One of the primary benefits of additional outer borough office space is that it helps to drive job generation, both in the construction of the space and for the workers who will occupy the permanent office space. This project is expected to create 250 construction jobs, more than 430 office jobs, and 30 retail and residential management and operations jobs. The residential employees will be members of 32BJ, receiving union wages and benefits. As previously mentioned, to make sure these employment opportunities are accessible to the community, as part of the transaction, the developer has agreed to participate in the Hire NYC program with the goal of hiring 50% locally and to do direct outreach to NYCHA tenants. Additionally, the developer is committing to spending 30% of construction costs with minority and women-owned contractors. Next slide. Pass it over to Stephen from the
Hi,
RAPS.
everyone. My name is Stephen Hayes, and on behalf of the RAPSKI team, I wanted to thank you all for your time and consideration of this ULURP application. I wanted to quickly highlight the programmatic components of the project, all of which are as of right, except for the office component, which is the subject of this ULURP, and also quickly show you how the program informed our design. The drawing to the right is a elevation drawing standing on Adams Street facing the building. The bridge is behind it, and the left side, the left corner is the intersection of Front Street and Adams Street, just so you can get acclimated. In talking to community members before the ULURP and as we proceeded with this project, it was evident that some viewed some of the newer buildings in Dumbo as being architecturally unresponsive, and we definitely didn't want that to be the case. We wanted to not create a monolithic building, but instead create one that reflects the diversity of uses within Dumbo as well as the uses within our building. So as I described the programmatic elements, I'm going to show you where they are within that drawing and within the building. Starting from the bottom, the retail is on the ground floor, and most of it will be concentrated along Front Street, which is again on the left side of the intersection of Adams on this drawing. Front Street, is, as many of you probably know, is a retail corridor that's quite successful, but there is a gap under the bridge between the two sides, and this will help encourage movement along Front Street with retail in this location. Up Adams Street on the ground floor will also be some retail and also separate entrances for the office component and the residential component above, as well as the parking garage that is on the second floor. The second part of the building as we go up is the office component, which is the subject of this ULURP, of course. One thing I wanted to note is that the office is, this building is planned to be ready in the second half of 2023. And that will hopefully be post-COVID. And we do know that the office tenants that we're anticipating being here, which is the Creative Tech Center, sector is eager to be back into office space because of waning efficiencies and creativity that they currently are experiencing. Just above that is the sort of a transitional piece with a setback that matches the top of the bridge. That's a amenity space area, and above that is the as of right residential, which is going to be approximately 225 units. We can go to the next slide. And I know I'm running out of time.
With apologies to the applicant team, we have used up the 10-minute time for the presentation. So at this point, we will turn it over to the commissioners for questioning, beginning with Commissioner Delauz.
I appreciate the presentation. I'm wondering, I'm sure you all heard the questions I had at review session where I specifically asked, and this is really more to EDC, whether there was any consideration given prior to the RFP being issued to including an affordable housing component as part of the sale of development rights. It just seems like a real missed opportunity to do so, given the overall lack of new affordable housing opportunities and truly and deep affordable housing opportunities in Community Board 2. I appreciate the office component and understand why it matches with a number of EDC's goals and local neighborhood considerations. I'm just, I'm glad you highlighted the local hiring components. I'm just wondering if the city is actually going to commit any funding specific to training any local residents for any of the office jobs. And if the 50% local hiring goal for office jobs specifically includes folks who have barriers to employment.
Thank you for your questions. Just to recap, and I'll let Christina Rausch respond. The first one is, why did the RFP not prioritize or include affordable housing? And the second one, why did the city, or is the city committing funding to the hiring goals, specifically the local 50% hiring goal? Christina?
Thank you, Commissioner, for your questions. So we did hear the feedback from the commission earlier about the importance of affordable housing here, and we wanted to make sure we were responsive. We were really trying to accomplish a policy goal of job creation, especially in outer borough areas with this particular disposition. So the RFP was released not long after the city's 2017 jobs plan was published, New York Works, which really called for strategies to spur job growth, especially in the tech and creative industries that are thriving in the Brooklyn Tech Triangle. So because of the location and because of city's policy goals for this. That's why we were focused on maximizing commercial office here. The proposal itself did not say that no residential could be used. That was RFP allowed for proposals that include residential uses, provided that the proposed development maximize commercial use of the available rights. But there's a limit as to how much development potential the receiver lot can accommodate without requiring a height waiver. On your second question about the 50% hiring goals for those who have barriers to employment, we would have to come back to you with the specific language around the requirements for a higher NYC program.
And is there any conversation about the city committing funding so that the developer can actually meet those goals? Folks who actually have barriers to employment?
So that has not been something that has been discussed yet. It's something we can take under advisement. We typically require developers to include local hiring requirements. And, we hear your concern there about specific needs for those who have barriers.
Yeah, listen, obviously I'm disappointed deeply, honestly, that that EDC didn't think more broadly about the things that it was prioritizing during the RFP process. I understand that the developer responded, they had flexibility and they responded in the way that they did. And I would just, absent a do-over, which is not going to happen on this, I think at the very least the city can do something to help ensure that local low and moderate income folks are actually going to benefit from the job growth in meaningful ways through some kind of workforce investment.
Thank you. I also wanted to give Stephen Hayes the opportunity to speak to any pipeline planning for hiring that he was coordinating or Rapsky's coordinating with NYCHA. Stephen?
Yes, apologies for going too long, by the way, before. Yeah, we are working with NYCHA's office in Greece, which has quite a network of people and opportunities for local hiring within both the construction side as well as permanent hiring side. And that's just been kicked off and we're starting that now. And I've certainly talked further with Christina about the other opportunities for local hiring, particularly for the populations that you've just described. We have a higher NYC plan, as Christina mentioned, and that's a work in progress and that can certainly be amended.
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with Reese. We work, in my day job, I work with Reese all the time. I'll just say that it doesn't negate the need for investment to specifically help prepare people for jobs that are going to be available. It's one thing to offer a job. It's another thing to help train people for the very jobs that are going to be developed and created.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I'd like to know what methodology or methodologies are you going to use to identify minority contractors for the specific trades that are going to be utilized during the construction, as well as the labor force. I think historically labor force is easier to identify, but with regard to subcontractors, who are you going to engage to facilitate that whole effort?
I'll pass this again to Stephen to speak to Rapsky's methodology, but again, it's kind of wrapped into the higher NYC plan. Stephen, can you give us more detail?
There's actually additionally an NWB hiring plan for construction, and that has an outline of methodologies that have been used in the past. I don't have it in front of me, and I can certainly get it to you, or the methodologies there. We are also in the process of looking for a consultant who can help us with this. There are a few that we are aware of in the area that have been successful in reaching out to NWB contractors and subcontractors. We don't have that person signed up yet, but we have a few in mind. So certainly I can share or have EDC share the information on the NWB plan, hiring plan.
Any other question? Yes, Commissioner Burney.
I'm sorry, my raised hand function is not working, not there for some reason, but thanks. We heard at the review session that CB2 had disapproved the application on the basis of their concerns about the added pressure on the York Street subway station, which is already heavily used, and also the issue about the state of the existing DOT lots under the Manhattan Bridge overpass there. And I wonder if EDC has given any thought to addressing these concerns.
Thank you. So first I'll speak to the subway. We are aware of your comments made at the review session yesterday, both about York Street subway and the DOT lots. So first for York Street, our project did undertake an environmental assessment statement, an EAS, that looked at traffic and public transportation potential impacts on the neighborhood. The increment or the project that was studied did not generate more than 200 additional trips during peak hours, so below the threshold for impact. But putting the seeker threshold aside, we did hear that at the community board. We're aware of the concerns, and I'm going to let Christina and Stephen speak to ongoing conversations we're having with MTA and DOT.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just echo Brooke's statement that we have been in dialogue and started thinking through how, what can be done in these particular issues. We've had numerous community conversations with groups as well as the community board and borough president. Stephen, do you want to speak to the BP?
Yes, please, if I could.
On that issue then, would you be able to get back to us when you get some response from those discussions?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Could I just add one quick thing on this? We have been working with the borough president, who I believe his opinion is coming out any day now, as well as Councilmember Levin, to address some of these issues, particularly the DOT site issues. While we can't control it, and I know EDC is working on it, we did offer to sponsor a study as soon as possible for a complete understanding of the DOT sites, the ones that will be potentially vacated sooner rather than later, and then also a cleanup plan for them. And we also, with working with the Borough President's Office, are making ourselves available to participate in the New York City Plaza program as soon as the plaza becomes available to help fund the renovation of the plaza. And also, you'll see in the Borough President's report, the other concern that was raised was also the need for affordable space for local arts and cultural center, cultural users, as well as local retailers. And we committed with them and the council member to set aside 10%, 10,000 square feet of the commercial space at 50% below market to accommodate those users. And we're going to be working with the Borough President's Office and the council member to identify who those users might be.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Then I will thank the applicant team and we'll turn to speakers, beginning with Mark Espinoza.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please begin.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Chair Largo and members of the commission. My name is Mark Anthony Espinoza, and I've been a member of 32BJ for 13 years. I am here on behalf of the 85,000 building service workers 32BJ represents in New York City to express our support for this 69 Adams construction. 32BJ has a track record of working with the Ravsky Group and partnering to create good prevailing wage building service jobs. In light of that, we are pleased that they have also made a credible commitment to the prevailing wage for the future building service workers at this site. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. We know that this development will continue to uphold the industry standard and provide opportunities for working families to thrive in Brooklyn. On behalf of 32BJ SEIU, I respectfully urge you to approve this project.
Thank you, Mr. Espinoza. Questions from the commission? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Regina Meyer.
Hello,
Hello, Ms. Meyer.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Good morning. Oh, excuse me.
Yes, feel free to proceed, Ms. Meyer.
Yes, sorry about that. I'm confused by the computer a little bit. My name is Regina Meyer. I'm president of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership. And on behalf of the partnership, I'd like to thank you for making the time for this hearing and express our support for the City of New York's proposed sale of unused development rights to the Rabsky Group for office use at 69 Adams Street. This action will facilitate the construction of new office space to support continued job growth in Brooklyn, in alignment with the mayor's New York Works Jobs Plan that was referenced earlier in this session, calling for investment in emerging commercial centers with strong access to transportation. The proposed building, as you know, includes not just the residential units that are built with the as-of-right floor area, but also the office space transferred via development rights, along with retail space and parking. The new office space is enabled to really expand the district's technology and creative hub, something that we've been working on through the support of the Brooklyn Tech Triangle for over a decade, and will be designed to have a safe work environments and adapted to reflect the evolving market demand in the coming years. I want to add that this mixed-use model really does support the live-work opportunities as the city and the borough recover from the impacts of the pandemic. Furthermore, the project will also create new jobs for the Brooklyn community through commitment to local and MWBE hiring. I was pleased to hear that the Rabsky Group is already working to find expertise in this category. We've had a lot of success with other public projects in downtown Brooklyn, really making a difference on local hiring. So I am really stand by to aid in any way to make sure that this really happens. Also, the Rabsky Group will be working with EDC on this, and as I mentioned, I am happy to help and facilitate this in any way, and also work with NYCHA and the community organizations to post open positions and recruit candidates for jobs. And I just want to add here that my colleague at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, David Ehrenberg, has just started a phenomenal program for internships that I hope we can loop into this process to make sure that there's success on hiring. As Commissioner Delos mentioned, that this is always difficult work. 69 Adams Street will provide critical new space to support continued job growth in greater downtown Brooklyn during the economic recovery. And I urge you to support this proposal. Many thanks.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Meyer? Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker will be Sinead Wadsworth.
If you don't mind, I actually do have a quick question for Ms. Meyer.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, Regina. Thank you so much for testifying. One thing that might be helpful, especially given the local hiring goals that are here, and I'm wondering what information the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership may have about the demographics of the people that are currently benefiting from the jobs in the Tech Triangle. And as you said, obviously the Navy Yard has some new programs, and there's a number of efforts I know that are underway to try to ensure that the job growth that is happening both at the Navy Yard and downtown Brooklyn kind of benefit a broader group of people. But I'm just wondering if you could like share some like basic data with the commission, and then, you know, if possible, what programs are already available, and like what sectors they're targeting. You know, kind of going back to the point I made earlier about, you know, EDC or SBS making some investments that's tied to this transfer of development rights to kind of, you know, help the developer meet those goals.
Is Ms. Meyer still with us?
She is. She should be able to unmute. Hold on. There
Is
we
that
go.
better?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Commissioner. What I was saying is that we have found over the past few years in various research that we've done, and I can forward you links to these studies, we have found that there is a more diverse workforce in the startups in downtown Brooklyn and Dumbo, happily. I don't want to overstate, but they are on a percentage basis, and that is meaningful. As you know, we have to work very, very hard in this category. I was really, we're also working very hard with both City Tech and the Brooklyn Navy Yard on furthering internship and job accessibility. We here also at the partnership run our own jobs board with with companies in downtown Brooklyn to make sure they are so aware of the incredible student body in colleges like City Tech, St. Francis, and LIU, all of whom, as you know, have incredibly diverse student bodies. So this is the kind of work we're doing. And I will forward to you the exact data that we have on the profile of the companies as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Our next speaker is Sinead Wadsworth.
Sinead Wadsworth, you are unmuted. You may speak.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at today's hearing in regards to 69 Adams Street for the disposition of city-owned development rights. My name is Sinead Wadsworth, one of the area standing representatives for the New York City District Council of Carpenters. On behalf of 20,000 members, carpenters, cabinet makers, millwrights, dock builders, timbermen, and industry workers, we would like to offer our full support for this project. Prior to this hearing, we've been in contact with the development team who has committed to union jobs, local hire initiatives, and hiring MWBE contracting opportunities. And I commend them for believing in our city, because as more companies and real estate developers continue to leave New York, projects like this will help our economy and keep it going, while at the same time creating new jobs and opportunities for residents in the immediate area. New Yorkers have been through a lot in these past few months, and the hardworking men and women in our city have been hit hard. A global health pandemic causing historic unemployment has ripped through the construction industry, and we're finally taking the steps towards recovery. One thing that has become clear is that we need responsible development now more than ever. Thank you for your time, and we ask that you please support this proposal, and the Carpenters look forward to working with the Rapsky Group in the near future. Safety and abundance, everybody. God bless.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Wadsworth. Questions from the commission? At this point, I would note that if anyone has not signed up to speak, but would be interested in speaking, that now would be the time to register. Registration is required, and you can find instructions on how to register online or via phone at www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. And while we wait to see if other folks would like to register to vote, if I could ask you, Ryan, to inform folks who are listening in about the recess that we'll be taking at 11:30.
Certainly. So the commission will be taking a recess at 11:30 to 12:30 to observe the inauguration in Washington. And we invite everybody else to take that same break and participate in that same activity.
And if you could confirm, Ryan, that the way to sign in is exactly the same as for this first portion of the meeting.
Yes, it's the same meeting. We'll be keeping this meeting open as part of just to keep it open. So the sign in will remain the same. If you've already signed up, we'll keep you there. If you need to, if you log out of this Zoom room and need to log back in, you can sign in again, and we'll manage that on the back end.
Okay. And I would ask Ryan if you would check to see if there are other speakers.
Certainly. There are no further speakers on calendar number 24.
Great, then the public hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar numbers 25 through 28. CDs 10 and 11. Calendar number 25, 200276 HAM. Calendar number 26, C 200277 HAM. Calendar number 27, C 200278 HAM. Calendar number 28, C 200279 HAM. A public hearing in the matter of applications for a UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned properties.
There will be a 10-minute presentation by an applicant team comprised of Joan Wong, Deanda Simmons, Matthew Melody, Emmanuel Gillen, and Kenneth Morrison.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Lago, Vice Chair Nuggles, and the City Planning Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to present the Central Harlem Neighborhood Construction Program Open Door Cluster Project. My name is Zhong Huang, a borough planner with HPD's Manhattan Planning Division. I'm joined by my colleagues, Deanda Simmons, Director of Manhattan Planning, and our development partners, Lombard Development Group, Iris Development, and the Curtis and Ginsberg Architects. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Central Harlem Neighborhood Construction Program and Open Door Cluster is a scattered site project comprised of 12 sites throughout Central Harlem and East Harlem. In 2014, HPD issued a request for qualification RFQ for this site, and the development team was selected in 2017. The goal for this RFQ was to promote neighborhood revitalization across the city through infill developments that expands opportunity for affordable homeownership and the rental apartments. The project was presented to the Community Board 10 and 11 several times in 2019 and 2020 pre-ULURP and during ULURP. Next slide, please. This project was certified on October 5th, 2020, and we are seeking your approval for the disposition of city-owned land to facilitate the development of approximately 120 units, including 72 rental and 48 homeownership units. So now I will turn the presentation over to our development team.
Next slide. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Kenneth Morrison, principal of Lemoore Development Group. We're a Harlem-based MWBE developer of affordable housing. I'm joined by my joint venture partner, Iris Development, an MWBE affordable sustainable housing developer, represented today by Emmanuel Dillon. And we are also joined by Matt Melody, architect with Curtis and Ginsburg, a New York City-based WBE architect. I'm going to ask Matt to start the presentation related to the site location information. Next slide.
Good morning, everyone. This map shows the location of each of the development sites that are part of this project. They're scattered mainly through central Harlem, with one site located in East Harlem. All of the sites are quite narrow, ranging between about 17 feet wide and 33 feet wide at the widest. They also exist in a series of different zoning districts, mostly in the R7 categories, as well as one site that is an R8 district. Next slide, please. This slide shows the address of each site. Again, you see the one site in East Harlem and then the majority of them in Central Harlem. The green sites here designate the open door or home ownership development sites, and the blue sites represent the rental sites. I should also note that all of these are currently vacant lots with no existing buildings on them. Next slide, please. General development overview: all of the sites are being designed as multifamily affordable housing with one small scale retail space on a site on Frederick Douglass Boulevard. Since the sites are in a number of zoning districts, they come in a variety of scales. So there are some 4-story walk-up buildings, some 6-story elevator type apartment buildings, and one 10-story building, which has the commercial space in the ground floor. There are 120 affordable apartments in this development, and all of them are designed to HPD design guidelines. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Ken to speak to the funding.
For the rental portion of the development, which represents 8 buildings and 72 apartments, we will use HPD's NCP term sheet, which allows for the development of rental housing available to families whose incomes fall between 30% and 80% of the AMI. For the for sale portion, which represents 4 buildings and 48 apartments, we will use HPD's open door term sheet, which allows families whose incomes are between 80 to 120% AMI to qualify. The next slide. Here we are showing the affordability unit mix. We show the breakdown for each AMI level. For the 71 rental units that will go to market, there will be 1 supers unit. There are 31 studio apartments, 38 1-bedrooms, and 3 3-bedrooms, and that's for the rental portion. And for the for sale, there are a total of 48 units. 12 of the units will be affordable to families between 80 to 90 AMI, another 12, 90 to 110, and then 24 for 110 through 120. There will be 1 studio, 21 bedrooms, 23 2-bedrooms, and 4 3-bedroom apartments. Next slide. Here we show, first I'd like to state that 10% of the rental units will be slated for the formerly homeless. And then you'll see the income levels, the actual income that will be needed for the various AMI levels. I'll start at the lowest at 30% AMI, and you see the income range from 23 to 34, 110. And then at the highest level on the rental at 80% AMI, the income ranges are between 63, 680, 90,000, 960. For the for sale portion, the open door, again, we show the AMI levels and the incomes, 80 at the lowest end, 90,000 to 102, and then for the highest level, 125 to 147. I'd like to point out at this point that 80% of the units for this entire project are at 90% of the AMI levels or below. And we think that captures a great deal of the Harlem community. Can we move to the next slide? And here is the affordability matrix. Again, it just shows the number of units and bedrooms per AMI levels. And we do the same thing for the open door affordability. In regards to the rentals, the second part of the matrix actually shows the rent levels at the various AMI levels. So you see the rents at 30% AMI, start at $433 for the studios and move up. And in regards to the monthly maintenances that we would charge for the cooperatives, if the studio will be around $365, and the highest monthly maintenance would be $978 for the 3-bedroom. Next slide. And I'm going to ask Matt to finish the presentation regarding the sites.
Sure. So again, this is photos of these sites as they are existing. Again, they are quite narrow sites with no existing buildings on them. Next slide, please. Floor plan example, this is one of the wider sites. The unit types of all the developments were dictated by the width of these narrow sites. So here we were able to fit 2-bedroom apartments. These buildings, we have some nice amenities in them, common spaces, common lounge for the residents, bike storage, laundry space for the residents as well. And all of these type of buildings have elevator access to each floor. Next slide, please. On the flip side, we have the very narrow sites. This one is about 16 feet 8 inches wide. The only unit type that was fitting in here is studios. So that's what makes up these 4-story walk-up developments. Again, an elevator doesn't fit into this space due to the narrowness. That said, we have some other nice amenities in it. There's laundry facilities for residents and bike storage as well. The ground floor of these type of buildings will be ADA accessible, and the units above will be ADA adaptable for anyone that may need it. Next slide, please. All of the sites will meet enterprise green community standards, as well as use a high efficiency VRF heating and cooling system that does not produce any carbon emissions. Next slide, please. And then facade wise, each of the developments uses brick as its primary facade material to reflect the neighboring context and the materiality of neighboring buildings. Brick colors have mainly been tuned towards working within the context of each site that they're in. We've also designed the windows as a series of regular punched window openings to really reflect the rhythm of the neighboring buildings as well. Next slide, please. You can see an example here of one of the narrow sites, a little 4-story walk-up. Next slide, please. And then on the avenues, we use brick as well, mixed with a durable fiber cement panel system for some added texture. And then up at the top of the 10-story building, we've designed in a space for a public-facing mural, ideally working with a local artist or artist group to help design that. That would be using a customized panel system as well that has a weatherproof barrier on it. And that's it.
Perfect timing. Thanks so much to the applicant team. And so I would now ask if there are questions from the commissioner. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the sequence of construction. Is it the plan to build all of these sites simultaneously, or will you sequence the construction serially?
So, yep, this is Ken Morrison. I'll respond to that question. So the open door, which will include 4 buildings, we anticipate that project closing first. So that will actually be the first sequencing. And then when we close the NCP of the 8 buildings, we will discuss it with the contractor since it is 8 smaller sites. But the goal is to have no more than maybe 3 starts to the construction. But hopefully we can do it in 2.
When you say 2 for the across all of the sites?
I'm sorry, across all of the sites, right? Open door being 4 buildings being the number 1, being the first, and then the 8 buildings. Then we may have to do it in 2, but the goal is to do it in 1. But we have to have discussions with our contractor.
Okay, Mr. Morrison, post construction, who will manage these properties? Will you manage, or will that be a third party?
We plan on Lamore Realty will manage. We plan on managing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delauze.
Vice Chair Knuckles asked one of my questions, which was about the management. first off, I'll just say that, you know, I'm going to give a lot of props to the super who's going to manage 71 units scattered in that area. I'm glad that you all have other buildings in the area, so hopefully you'll have a backup. The question I have really is about the open door buildings and you know, what experience either developer has with first-time homebuyer projects and any experience partnering with local housing counseling agencies.
Sure. So this is Ken Morrison again. So we've done some for sale product, but that, I'll be honest with you, was maybe over it was over a decade ago. We did some city-owned brownstones that we sold to the market. So I have some for sale experience in this world. In regards to working with housing counselors, we plan on working with HCCI, which is a Harlem-based not-for-profit that has an extensive home ownership training program. So we're going to bring them, and they're going to be involved with this project.
And this is Emmanuel Gillum. I'll just briefly add from the IRS development side, we have extensive experience with first-time home buyers in the New Orleans market, where we've extensively worked with local neighborhood development organizations to provide everything from financial literacy training to credit building to all the types of things that you know, we're going to need to do in this case also with HCCI to get homeownership, first-time homeownership products in the right home buyers' hands.
And additionally, good morning. This is Beyonda Simmons from HPD. I also want to add, we have our Home First down payment assistance program that HPD offers to qualified home buyers, and that will be up to $40,000. That will be provided either for the down payment or closing costs for the first-time home buyers.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair. Kenny, thank you for the presentation. My only question today to your team is, are you doing cooperatives or condominiums on these homeownership sites?
Yes, no, they're going to be cooperatives.
Okay, so that leads me to my second question, Kenny. How were you able to structure? Are you structuring these as one cooperative across two buildings or two separate cooperatives? I'm just curious.
No, they're going to be 4 individual cooperatives.
Got it. And each building has how many units? I'm sorry, I just want to parse this out a little further.
Sure. Let me go back to the slide.
Thank you.
I can't say it's on average 12. There are at least 10 per building, but one of them is 15, and I don't know the exact numbers by heart, but it's 48 total across 4 buildings.
Got it. That's sufficient information. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Commissioner Burney.
Thank you. You know, I know Curtis and Ginsberg Architects. They're a very fine architecture firm, but I noticed that in some of the buildings, there's a surprising sort of splashes of color across the brick facade. So I don't know what caused that rush of blood to the head, but maybe that can be corrected before it comes back to us again.
This was just to speak to that. One of the guiding intents here was to try to give a space for the public art, that there's just the history of this in the neighborhoods, and make a space for that. The idea would not be to paint the brick, but would be to, like I mentioned on the tall building, doing this on the others as well, teaming with a local artist or arts group, ideally for someone in the neighborhood to design something that could go on here, and it would be done as a Fundermax type panel, which doesn't really deteriorate over time like painting on a brick wall would, say. So that's generally the idea.
Okay, I would just exercise caution on that. I mean, I think temporary art is one thing, permanent art is another. You live with it forever if you do it that way, and there's often sort of an unfortunate association with you know, affordable housing and these type of projects. So if you want these buildings to sort of blend in, it may not be the best choice, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant team? Then thank you for your presentation. I will note that we're getting near the end of this public hearing. And so if you haven't registered to speak on this particular item, but have decided during the course of the hearing that you'd like to be heard, please register right now with instructions on how to register both online or via phone at www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. Our next speaker will be Tim Anderson.
Good morning. My name is Tim Anderson. I'm the urban planner for community boards 9, 10, and 12 at the Office of the Manhattan Borough President. I'm testifying on behalf of Manhattan Borough President Gail A. Brewer regarding the aforementioned applications, the Harlem NCP infill sites, and the Harlem Open Door Cluster. Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to testify regarding the 4 applications before the commission. The NCP infill and open door cluster projects address a long-term need for affordable housing. Community boards 10 and 11 have made it clear that affordable housing is one of their top priorities, and I support them. Affordable housing creation was also a key goal of the 2017 East Harlem rezoning, which included the site at 2 East 130th Street. These projects present an opportunity to remedy the shortage of affordable housing in Harlem. I'm supportive of these applications, but there are areas of concern I would like to address. The NCP infill units will add to the housing stock in the community and give the most vulnerable, who are extremely low income, access to quality affordable housing. Of the 72 units proposed under these applications, 36 units, or 50%, will be designated for very low income individuals and households. Of those 36 units, 12 units will be designated for extremely low income individuals and households. The remaining 36, or 50%, will be designated for low income individuals and households. HPD should provide the necessary assistance to prospective buyers to help ensure that they are from the community. Open door unit purchasers should receive timely and sufficient down payment assistance, particularly for residents who will face higher payments. In addition, the majority, if not all, of these purchasers would be first-time homeowners, so technical assistance will be crucial to ensuring the success of the open door program. I've raised this issue previously and hope that HPD will help purchasers have all the financial and technical support they need to become successful homeowners. This assistance is necessary to make the program truly accessible to a range of lower income individuals and households. I also raised the concerns with HPD about resale restrictions. It's my understanding that if the purchaser sells their unit or refinances during the regulatory period, the purchaser may realize up to a 2% appreciation on the original purchase price per year of owner occupancy. Upon resale, the purchaser will be required to sell to a household making no more than the project's income range. I'm pleased that HPD has established these regulations to ensure that units remain affordable in perpetuity. Additionally, I am in support of the partnership with the MBEs and WBEs to bring housing to Central Harlem. These entities have a proven record of success in creating affordable housing. I would also like to note that the applicant's request for a mayoral zoning override for 3 of the NCP infill sites with these projects are already going through a public review process, or seems a little unnecessary. This decision on behalf of the applicant and the city raises questions about the use of mayoral zoning overrides in general, and this is an issue my office will be following closely. Thank you for your careful review of these applications.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Questions from the commission? Not seeing any, I will ask Ryan if anyone else has signed up to speak on this matter.
No, we have no further speakers on items 25 through 28.
Okay, then this public hearing is closed. And would you suggest, Ryan, that we now go into recess so as not to have a split hearing?
It's looking, well, yeah, that would probably be the safest. I don't want to crowd the next one out.
Yeah, I would rather prefer to have a robust discussion all at once. And so we will now go into recess and we will resume at 12:30. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We'll begin with, or continue with item number 29, Borough of Manhattan, CD2, C 210001 ZSM, a public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 61-63 Crosby Street.
Our first speaker will be the applicant, Frank Cheney.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for making time for us on this historic day. I know from yesterday's review session that Andrew Cantu gave you a full briefing on the background and facts and circumstances of the application. So I'm going to just jump straight into discussion of the required findings, followed by some comments in response to the Community Board and Borough President recommendations. Next slide, please. Because we have no bulk modifications, the only finding we have is for the use modifications, and that they will have no adverse effects on the building and surrounding area. Next slide. As evidence of that, I think we need to look no further than the Envision Soho NoHo report, which found that retail uses are in fact widespread throughout the area, having a greater percentage of ground floor area than the West Village and even East Midtown. Next slide. This was reiterated in the Soho NoHo draft scope, which also found that retail and commercial uses occupy ground floor space in most of the project area's buildings. Next slide. The draft scope also found that the current zoning is obsolete and onerous and contributes to a high retail vacancies and a lack of storefront diversity. Next slide. As to the community board recommendations, of course, you know what they were, but I think I'll deal first with the last one, which is the cellar storage space. Next slide. And that will be, it will be used for storage space only. And this is on account of the low headroom clearance in the cellar, which prohibits it from being used as selling floor space for the retail on the ground floor. Next slide. As to keeping the two retail spaces separate, in this application, you see that the two spaces on the south, the 61 Crosby Street side, the area is less than 2,400 square feet. Next slide. And on the north side, 63 Crosby Street, it's even smaller than that, less than 1,700 square feet. Next slide. And combined, if combined, the total floor area would be just a little bit more than 4,000 square feet. Next slide. Which is less than the 5,000 square foot maximum allowed for eating and drinking establishments, and less than half the 10,000 square feet that differentiates use groups of local retail from 10 big box store. Next slide. As to the recommendation that no eating and drinking establishment be permitted, because the spaces are small, the type of eating and drinking establishments that might be located there would be small, and or specialty food and beverage services that would not have objectionable influence. And the combined 4,067.
Mr. Cheney, I'm afraid your time is up.
Oh.
I'll turn it to the commissioners now. For any commissioners wishing to ask questions. Vice Chair Knuckles.
So it sounds, Mr. Cheney, it sounds like, based on what you were saying before the time expiration, that you are, your position is to keep your options open with regard to the combination of space as well as the kind of retail that you would put in the first floor. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. We believe that given the uncertain economics of brick and mortar retail, especially now and in the foreseeable post-COVID future, in order to attract viable tenants to the spaces, the owners need the greatest amount of flexibility that they can have, and that would include the ability to combine the spaces which again would be only slightly more than 4,000 square feet, not a big store by any means whatsoever, and to be able to consider all allowable uses.
Okay. What would you say, therefore, to the concerns that have been expressed by the community regarding quality of life issues that sometimes can spring from certain kinds of uses, especially beverage and eating establishments? How would you allay those fears?
Well, I would say again that even in this location, even if the spaces were combined, and let me just say that the owners do not have any plans to combine the two spaces in the foreseeable future. But even if they were, the combined space would be small, much less than the 5,000 square feet that a food and eating and drinking establishment could be in Soho No under the current rules. And the type of eating and drinking establishment that would be located in these two spaces, even in the combined space, would not be the type of eating and drinking establishment that would create the kind of objectionable influences that the community board is concerned with. I would also note that in the Envision Soho NoHo report, that report, while noting some concern with regard to certain eating and drinking establishments having these kinds of objectionable influences, it also noted a concern amongst the stakeholders in that study for a scarcity of eating and drinking establishments in the area. And if you look through the area, you will see that other than a cluster of eating and drinking establishments along the northern part of West Broadway within the M15A, M15B districts, and another cluster kind of focused along Lafayette, at the very, very edge of the district, you can go up and down Wooster Street, Green Street, Mercer, even Broadway, and the number of eating and drinking establishments in the area on those streets are somewhat few and far between, and a lot of them are small. I'm not saying that there has been no restaurant having creating objectionable influences anywhere in the district, but I think the notion that Soho is overrun with such establishments is not borne out by the facts, and that one of the problems that I have with the recommendation to prohibit all eating and drinking establishments, and we spoke about this with the community board, obviously didn't persuade them, that it's too broad of a prohibition. And while banning any eating and drinking establishment whatsoever would surely prevent any objectionable influences from being created, it also prevents the creation of the kind of eating and drinking establishments that the Envision Soho NoHo report thought would be necessary to better, and I'm quoting here, better sustain the residential daytime working and shopping populations. It prevents a cupcake shop, prevents a sandwich shop, it prevents a wine bar, it prevents a coffee bar, it prevents everything, even the type of eating and drinking establishments that at least some of the members of the Envision Soho NoHo team thought were lacking in Soho NoHo. So I think that's our response. I think that an owner of a building should not be presumed to be a bad actor And here, I think if you look at what this owner has done with this building, particularly with regard to the historic restoration of the building, going above and beyond the call of duty, and David Grider, the architect, could answer specific questions about this, but two things spring to mind. In restoring the cast iron facade of the ground floor, rather than replace the missing elements with fiberglass, something cheap, they went to the expense of finding an out-of-state cast iron foundry to recast the cast iron elements. The entire ground floor, the wooden portions of the ground floor facade were rebuilt in mahogany. Mahogany. Now, who does that? Nobody does that.
Understood.
I think these are conscientious owners.
Mr. Cheney, if I could ask that you please
Yes.
speak to answering the question, which was not about the restoration at this point.
No, and
Vice Chair?
I would say.
Well, I think it goes to the character of the owners and their desire to be good neighbors.
Again, if you could answer the questions. Vice Chair Knuckles?
I was going to say, I think you've adequately addressed the question that I asked. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I rambled.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, then I will thank you, Mr. Cheney. And in keeping with our standard practice, we will begin with speakers in opposition. Our first speaker is Federica Siegel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Frederica Siegel here, Chair of the Land Use Committee of CB2. In 2018, this applicant came before us looking for a BSA variance to permit retail use on the ground floor. At that time, they agreed to no eating and drinking and to keeping the two retail spaces separate. CB2 recommended approval, but the application was subsequently withdrawn. Now they're back, and we are simply looking for the same protections. The sentiment has been expressed that we should not be overly prescriptive, quotes, especially these days. But when these special permits are granted, they are permanent and they apply to all owners. Yes, the pandemic will change things, but who yet knows how? What will not change is the local residents' continuing struggle to maintain a reasonable quality of life in opposition to the expectations of the owners for no restrictions. That is the basic challenge of mixed use that no rezoning will ever completely resolve. If rising to that challenge with our best thinking to balance and protect the needs of both groups ultimately ensures Soho's continued success, I think it's worth the extra effort. The daytime working and shopping populations are not the residents of Soho. So let me just repeat that CB2 has no problem with coffee shops and retail on the ground floor. We just do not want the oversaturation of liquor licenses, late hours, noise, and traffic that restaurants bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Siegel. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, thank you for that comment. And I think, we certainly are sensitive to the concerns of the community. We also recognize zoning as a very blunt tool. I'm curious in your experience and your time looking at this matter, have you identified other tools, other potential solutions to addressing some of the challenges associated with eating and drinking establishments? Is there something beyond zoning that you're aware of that is sort of a tool in your arsenal to address these challenges?
Honestly, if we had one, I think we would have used it by now. I know that the community board was very invested in the Envision Soho NoHo process. We hope that that would proceed. There would be an opportunity through that process to explore these things in depth to do more research, to have a meaningful dialogue. We still look forward to that, the opportunity, unfortunately, without the Envision Soho NoHo. But it is something that, as I say, it's extremely complex. But it's produced an amazing neighborhood, and so let's keep at it until we get it right.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Siegel, but also for your service on the community board as well.
Thank you.
I'll note that we have only one other speaker who has signed up on this matter. If you haven't registered to speak but would like to, please note that registration is needed, and you can find instructions on how to register, whether online or via phone, at www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. We'll turn to our next speaker, David Greider.
Hi, I'm David Greider. I'm the architect for 6163 Crosby, and I don't really have anything to say. I'm here to answer any questions about architectural matters as it pertains to this application, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Greider from the commission? Seeing none, we'll let you off the hook, Mr. Greider. And Ryan, has anyone else registered to speak?
Let me check with the team here. No further speakers on calendar number 29.
Okay, then this hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 30, CD2, C200205 ZSM. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 5 Mercer Street.
The first speaker will be the applicant's representative, Frank Cheney. Welcome back, Mr. Cheney.
Thank you. Well, since I ran out of time on the last one, I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. So, and that should be easy because many of the things I have to say about this application were said before. Next slide, please. Here we have to deal with both the bulk and the use modifications findings. Next slide. And with regard to bulk, for all these reasons, we believe that the finding is met, particularly with regard to the LPC certificate of appropriateness. The enlargement will relate harmoniously to the building district. Next slide. Again, as to the ground floor retail use, we looked to the Envision Soho NoHo report that found that such uses are widespread. Next slide. Similarly, the Soho NoHo draft scope found that retail uses are widespread throughout the area. Therefore, the retail use on the ground floor will not have adverse effects on the building or the area. Next slide, please. Again, the CB2 recommendations, similar to the recommendations for 6163 Crosby. We'll deal with the last one very briefly. Next slide. We believe for all these reasons, the tenant's rights are protected under the loft law. They have had they've been advised of and had notice and opportunity to comment on all the legalization work, which has occurred within their units with their permission. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So here we have a combined floor space. It's a little bigger than 6163 Crosby Street, but still, next slide, still less than 5,000 square feet allowed for eating and drinking, and less than half the 10,000 square feet that would constitute a big box store. Next slide. Again, with regard to eating and drinking establishments, what you see on the right is a screen grab from Google Maps showing the relative scarcity of such eating and drinking establishments in the area. Next slide. Next slide. Therefore, we believe, as we spoke about before with regard to Crosby Street, that the eating and drinking establishment restriction is excessive here. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. With regard to the enlargement, the community board recommend denying it. Next slide. But we think that all of the objections will be addressed. Next slide.
Mr. Cheney, I'm afraid you have again run out of time, so I will turn it now over to the commissioners.
All right.
Commissioner Levin.
I'd like to take you up on your offer at the beginning of your presentation to tell us a bit about the tenant issues in the building, and particularly about the difference of opinion between the applicants and the attorney for the tenants about the status of the 5th floor unit.
Okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to those slides, but let me just briefly say this. The dispute is really with regard to the 5th floor unit, which is referred to as a buyer unit because it was subject to a sale of rights from the tenant. This occurred in 2008. The then tenant in 2008 sold their rights back to the owner, which was the prior owner before this one. And pursuant to Law Board Rule Section 210D2, units which are subject to a sale of rights are not rent regulated and can be rented for market rents. The community board chair, community board land use chair, Ms. Siegel, communicated with the law board, and the law board responded to her in an email, which I think department staff have a copy of that, confirming that buyer units subject to a sale of rights are not subject to rent regulation and can be rented at market rate. This was our representation. It was confirmed by the law board. It's disputed by an attorney for the 6 rent regulated tenants in the building. We believe that he is wrong about this, but I would point to the fact that this is, in terms of settling the question, the status of the unit as a buyer unit has been in place for the last 12 years. This is not something that just happened last week, last month, last year. This is something that has been in place for 12 years. The status of the buyer unit as a unit which can be rented at market rate is 12 years old. The prior owner and the current owner have, in good faith, followed all laws, rules, and regulations with regard to the legalization of these units. And as you know, a temporary certificate of occupancy was obtained last year, legalizing all of the units in the building, benefiting all of the rent regulated tenants. Those units will remain rent regulated. The buyer unit on the 5th floor is a unit that may be rented at market rate. The other, and all of the units, including the 5th floor buyer unit, will remain joint live work quarters for artists. So, you know, the question in from our perspective, the question of the status of the fifth floor unit was settled 12 years ago and has been settled for the past 12 years. Nothing is changing with regard to that. Once if assuming this application is approved, the ground floor use violation will be cured. And once the subsequent to that, permits will be filed for and obtained to perform the restoration work of the front facade, which has not begun yet, and the construction of the rooftop addition. Subsequent to that, a final C of O will be issued.
So the crux of the matter for this application is that the applicant is seeking to maximize the value of the fifth floor unit so that it can be rented at a pretty attractive market rate. Has that fifth floor unit been occupied since it was purchased by the owner?
Yes.
So is it currently occupied?
Yes, it is.
At a market rate rent?
Yes, as it has been.
And has that been challenged by the tenants independent of this application?
No. The tenant in that unit is not represented by the attorney representing the other 6 rent stabilized units.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Other questions from the commission?
I appreciate the background.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, please go ahead, Commissioner Levin.
No, I'm finished, thank you. But like Commissioner Deluz, I appreciate the background on this.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney.
Thank you.
And following our practice, we'll now turn to speakers in opposition, beginning with Frederica Siegel. Welcome back, Ms. Siegel. Ryan, could you check if Ms. Siegel?
Ms. Siegel, you can unmute your microphone.
Sorry. With respect to the special permit for retail on the ground floor and cellar, everything I just said about 6163 Crosby pertains to 5 Mercer and for the same reasons. Now, please permit me to clarify something. 2 weeks ago, I appeared before you on a 74-781, 65 Spring Street. Commissioner Levin asked me if I'd ever seen an application for an unbuilt space, and I said no. I was wrong. In June of 2019, 363 Lafayette came before us for 74-781. That was for almost 5,000 square feet of unbuilt space. But the application was memorable for all the quality of life concessions that the applicant was making to the community. Limiting the cellar to accessory use, reducing lighting and signage, agreeing to reasonable delivery hours, and even an effort to widen the sidewalk. This application is also memorable. How many of you remember the last time a building's owner applied to add a penthouse to a JLWQA apartment? The building has a complicated history of covered and non-covered IMD residential units. And at our 2 meetings, the attorney for the applicant and the attorney for the tenants haggled over the status of the 5th floor unit. That is not our area of expertise. We do know that the building does not have a final certificate of occupancy, and it has languished at the loft board. Andrew referred to it as undergoing legalization, but I'm not sure we should use a gerund like undergoing to describe a 35-year-old process. In 2015, the Loft Board published a list of 331 buildings under their jurisdiction. In October 2019, we were told that since then, a mere 9 buildings with the complexity, cost, and speed of this process is the reason that CB2 recommended denial of the construction of the penthouse until all the units have been legalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Siegel. Questions from the commission? Again, thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker will be Jason Friedman.
I am with the architecture firm, and I didn't have anything to say, although I'm very much in favor of the restoration work that we have planned for this project. But I was just here to answer any questions that the commission may have had.
If I could ask that production mute anyone who is not speaking, as we're picking up some background noise. And I'll now check if commissioners have any questions for Mr. Friedman, the architect. Then thank you, Mr. Friedman. Our next speaker is Jason Davidson.
Mr. Davidson's not in the room. I believe he works with the applicant, with Mr. Cheney, so it may have just been a backup.
Okay. And then at this point, I will note that we are close to the end of this hearing. And if you haven't registered to speak, but have since decided that you'd like to, please register at this point, and you can find the instructions for registering, whether online or via phone, at www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. And we'll now call on Joseph Lombardi.
Mr. Lombardi, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, please proceed.
I'm sorry. Yes, good afternoon. I'm the architect for this application, and I wanted to comment that the restoration and conservation of this exterior is one of the truly great projects in Soho. And I've done some 25 projects in Soho, and it's special because it's a marble facade from the Civil War and therefore very unusual. And a major amount of work had to go into the conservation and restoration. I recognize that that's not to the point of this particular hearing, but I felt it needed to be said. So thank you for letting me to say it.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Lombardi? Then again, thank you. And I'll ask Ryan if anyone else has signed up.
Let me check with the team here. No, we know no further speakers on this item 30.
Okay, then this hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 31, CDs 4 and 5, N210199 BDM, a public hearing in the matter of an application concerning the formation of the Flatiron bid expansion.
Our first speaker will be Michael Blaze Backer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Lago, or good afternoon, Chair Lago and commissioners. I offer my congratulations first and thanks to Commissioner De La Hoz for service to the Planning Commission in the city. I'm Michael Blaze Backer, Deputy Commissioner of Neighborhood Development at the Department of Small Business Services, and I'm here to testify in support of the expansion of the Flatiron Business Improvement District in Manhattan. At SBS, we are working hard to open doors for New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, focusing on creating stronger businesses, connecting New Yorkers to good jobs, and fostering thriving neighborhoods. We believe that the vitality of the city's commercial corridors is a key part of achieving this goal, and bids have been valuable and proven partners in small business support, neighborhood revitalization, and economic development across all 5 boroughs. City services, which by law cannot be reduced because of the existence of a bid, are only supplemented through a bid's delivery of services and improvements in their respective districts. In addition to our role overseeing and supporting the city's existing network of 76 bids, SBS also supervises the bid formation and expansion process, serving as an advisor and resource for communities interested in planning or expanding bids. We are careful to ensure that each steering committee we work with adheres to our planning process and policies, solicits robust community input, and performs extensive outreach to demonstrate broad-based support across all stakeholder groups. Moreover, we are cognizant of the unique nature of each community we assist and aim to empower local stakeholders to make determinations on proposed services, boundaries, and budget size that best suit their community's needs, and appetite and ability to pay assessments. While we always import strong planning principles and share our data and best practices from across the bid network when working with any bid formation and expansion effort, we recognize that the power and effectiveness of bids rests in their unmatched understanding of local needs and issues. Similar to other recent bid expansions, the Flatiron expansion effort involved numerous meetings with local stakeholders. After extensive outreach and close coordination with key stakeholders, SBS determined that the documented support among all stakeholder groups, including over 50% of the area's total assessed value signing in favor, was sufficient to submit the application to city planning. It's also important to note that this bid expansion effort has received the written support from Speaker Corey Johnson and Council members Carlina Rivera and Keith Powers. They've also received support from Manhattan Community Boards 4 and 5. I'd also like to acknowledge that the bid expansion effort is also represented here today by the Executive Director of the Flatiron bid and members of the Expansion Steering Committee who will also be providing testimony and answering questions. This time, happy to take any questions you might have for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Backer. Questions from the Commission? Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, thank you, and thank you, Blaise. You may have heard some of our discussion yesterday, which I think was a really interesting one about, the bids that assess residential versus those that don't. And one question that was raised was the kinds of assessments, residential assessments that occur when bids do assess residential. Could you speak to the number of bids that do this and what they typically, or what's typical and what isn't, or perhaps just what's your experience with the kinds of assessments and the formulas that typically are used?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that, and thanks for raising the issue. I did hear that it came up yesterday, and I think there was some stats maybe raised in regard to the number of bids that assess residential in some shape or form. So on that issue, and we double checked this data yesterday, but we 15 existing bids currently assess residential in some shape or form. So either explicitly through a residential class or a mixed use class, or because, as is often the case in some of the older bids, where there's simply no distinction between residential and commercial property. So the assessment formula is essentially for all properties. So in that case, that typically would include residential condos, for example. Then, of course, we also have a number of other bids, I think 18 bids that actually use assessed value in their assessment formulas. So while they do not sort of explicitly assess residential, essentially, should there be a residential unit, maybe they might assess it for a nominal dollar fee, but certainly the value of the underlying property is taken into account in determining the assessment. So say, what is common in our outer borough commercial corridors with a mixed use property that is not condoed. So taken all in, there's probably almost half that in some shape or form, take into account residential value. But in this case, as I think the Commission's aware, this is a mixed use class that, so it's not assessing residential condos in any way. So this is assessing, right, an apartment, a mixed use building that has part of the floor is dedicated to residential apartment rentals.
Thank you. And I think that information differs a little bit from what we receive, but I think it's very helpful. I think it's a definition of, what is included and what isn't. And perhaps the previous figures we received were much more focused on, a direct assessment to residential property. So thank you for that more expansive definition. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I don't know if this question is for SBS or perhaps one of the other speakers. Yesterday, I had asked a question about the actual level of outreach. In our information packet, it contained the statement that less than 1% of commercial and residential owners and 0 commercial tenants oppose plans for the bid expansion. And I just wanted to know what the universe of that outreach was. That, 1% of what?
Understood. I think I would. I think recommend certainly steering committee. Other members of the steering committee could certainly address that better than I could. My understanding is that there were, I think, 2 commercial property owner ballots that were in opposition, and 1 commercial tenant in opposition. So I think of the universe, I mean, certainly again, the outreach that is done by any sort of bid formation or expansion effort is extensive. And was done both, pre-COVID and post-COVID in this case. So again, they sort of reached the threshold for our, for our standards in moving forward. But I think in terms of the exact count, because sometimes responsiveness is a key part of this, and as well. And I know they were quite successful in getting a lot of both commercial property owners, residential property owners, as well as tenants in support. So I would perhaps Executive Director Metham could perhaps address that better than I could.
But before you go, what's your threshold again? What's the SDS?
Sure. Well, yeah. So it's, essentially the bid law actually, and I've probably spoken to this before, really speaks more to sort of to the documented opposition, right? So in order to sort of prevent an effort from moving forward, amount of documented opposition requirement is that either 51% of property owners or 51% of the value in the proposed district do not formally oppose the effort. So SBS actually goes above and beyond that, because we do feel like it's important to get broad-based support among various stakeholders. So we do tend to, again, not tend to hold steering committees to a higher standard to ensure that they've reached broad-based support, both property owners as well as from tenants. And so in this case, they did reach over 50% of the total assessed value in actual documented support.
Commissioner Burney.
Thank you. Good to hear you, Blaise, if not see you. I had 2 questions that I brought up at the review session. One was whether SBS had done any performance evaluation of the current Flatiron 23rd Street bid. And secondly, if there would be any change in governance once the expansion goes through.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to address that. So the way we look at sort of performance evaluation is perhaps, there's kind of multiple tiers to this, right? So obviously, as both, we wear a couple of hats at SBS, both sort of the oversight hat as well as sort of a governance hat, given that we represent the mayor on the board. So from sort of this oversight side of things, we really look at, 3 key pillars. We look at sort of their contract adherence, their transparency, and sort of good governance and management. And so for the last 5 years, actually, we really, we implemented a new way to sort of look at all bids and how they were doing under those 3 key pillars, which was where we felt like SBS had not only the authority to do so, but also sort of the actual sort of data points where we could actually look, the capacity to look at what each bid was doing in these 3 pieces. So in that sense, we look at each bid every year, how they're doing in those 3 key things. And I can say certainly in Flatiron's case, since we implemented this new process, has very much surpassed our standards. In sort of the performance as it might relate to, I should say for financial matters, of course, there's a lot of transparency and, baked into sort of our bid program, both from, independent audits that are submitted to both ourselves and the comptroller. And then of course, SBS sits on both the finance and audit committees of each bid. So we play a role there. I think the last thing I would say on sort of program evaluation, we really look at these as community-based run organizations. So we encourage, so bids essentially are beholden to not only their boards, but their stakeholders through annual meetings and through annual sort of surveys they might do of their own members. And so that's really where we see, we as SBS can't be out there to sort of rank how clean the streets are or how good the marketing campaign is, right? So we really defer to, the stakeholders themselves to kind of hold a bid and a bid's staff accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, in your view, they may not be as great as some other bids, like around Grand Central, for example, but they're doing okay.
They're doing just fine. So they're in very good hands, and I know, both under their previous leadership with Jennifer Brown, who was there, I think, for 10 years, and under James Metham, their current executive director, who used to.
And on the issue of governance,
So it's a good question. There's no sort of, again, bid law, right, dictates what a bid board's makeup is. So in this case, there's no sort of inherent change to what is required by the bid, but of course, we not only would SBS strongly advocate, but I think a bid would inherently take members of the steering committee who participated in this expansion and who explicitly represent properties within the expansion to join the board either at its next annual meeting, so be elected to the board as either a Class A, Class B, or Class C membership, so our commercial, either property owners, commercial tenants, or residential tenants, or in some cases it might depend on the bid's bylaws. They could potentially even join sooner than an annual meeting if that opportunity arises through a vacancy.
So are you saying the board would be expanded, or it would?
Not so essentially. So if I don't know how in the weeds you want me to get, but essentially, like bid law, ultimately, if you break it down to what's required, a minimum bid board size is 13. 4 of those 13 seats are the government Class D reps, including our SBS representing the mayor, and so the law says that the majority of the board must be property owners. So that ultimately comes to 7, right? So you need to have at least 7 property owners, 1 commercial tenant, and 1 residential tenant. So that gets you to sort of 9 local and 4 government. So that gets you to your minimum size. So the bid can continue to, according to its bylaws, continue to increase the size of its board if it so wishes, as long as property owners remain in the majority.
But you guys don't anticipate them doing that when they expand the boundaries?
I couldn't say it. You certainly could address that to another member. I'm not familiar enough with their bylaws to know. Some bylaws might actually have a maximum board size just to make governance easier. But in this case, if they do not have that, that could certainly be something they consider.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Deleuze.
The other commissioners asked my question, so I will pass, but I also will thank Blaise for his comments. I appreciate that.
And Commissioner Cerullo, I didn't know if you were just giving a thumbs up to another bid or if you had a comment to make.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think this is more of a reflection and a comment than a question, but I think that there's a message in the sort of success and the viewpoint of satisfaction of the bid's work by the fact that the surrounding community that was not initially in the bid has sought to be a part of the bid, which is leading to this expansion. And that is certainly a change over the decades of people's initial concern about being part of this mystery, how it was viewed of what were bids, why are we paying more money for things we already think we should be getting, for the taxes we pay. And I think expansions are always, especially with the support that this expansion is bringing, not every expansion comes with the same level of support, but I think in this particular case, there's an indication that the work that the bid is doing is embraced in a way that more people in the surrounding area want to be a part of. And I think that's a positive message in when we look at neighborhood development and the growing role bids play in communities, but that's a whole other story. But I was just thinking that as Commissioner Burney and Deputy Commissioner Backer were talking, but that was just a thought to share.
Thanks for sharing it. I don't see other hands up, and so we will thank you, Mr. Backer.
Thank you.
And we will now follow our practice of beginning with speakers in opposition. We go to Peter Davies.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Peter Davies. I live in Soho. I am a residential representative on the Soho Broadway Business Improvement District, also known as Soho Broadway Initiative. We are the only bid in New York City with expanded residential representation. This only came about due to a very long and drawn out fight to assure that residents in the area had representation on the bid, specifically renters. So bid law only requires, both bid law in New York State, New York City, requires only one resident to be on the board. We, due to a memorandum of understanding with council member in our district, we have 50-50 representation of residents and commercial property owners. So I just, I think it's very specific to each neighborhood, what works and what doesn't. And even with the expanded representation for residents, it is an ongoing discussion to make sure that renters and other residents have adequate representation when the bid is interacting with city agencies. So I just wanted to put that forward. I am not here speaking for or against this particular expansion, but I did hear the comments during the review session yesterday, and just wanted to make sure that the commissioners understood that each bid is very unique and each bid is dealt with uniquely from the community standpoint. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Davies. Very helpful. Questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. And we'll turn to our next speaker, who's been mentioned a number of times, James Metham.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is James Metham. I'm Executive Director of the Flatiron 23rd Street Partnership, and thank you all for considering our proposed expansion of the Flatiron Business Improvement District this afternoon. Since its formation in 2006, the partnership has been a dedicated steward of a dynamic business district and mixed-use neighborhood around Madison Square Park in Midtown South. We do this through reliable community engagement and trust, on top of our day in, day out deployment of supplemental quality of life services, homeless outreach, district marketing, public realm management, and business support and advocacy. While the partnership has played an important role in the Flatiron area's ongoing growth and vibrancy over the past 15 years, the greater neighborhood around the bid has changed in character and uses as well. An increasing number of businesses and residents in Nomad, 6th Avenue, and the Ladies Mile Historic District have regularly asked the partnership for the same level of consistent support and services that are provided inside the bid boundaries. So in 2016, a steering committee composed of local property owners, businesses, residents, and non-for-profits was formed to guide the exploration of an expanded Flatiron bid. And over the past 4 years, this steering committee, in close coordination with SBS, has openly debated boundaries and budgets, culminating in a revised district plan that we believe can be successfully and sustainably executed across a larger district from day one. These key components of the plan include extending the current bid's boundaries south to 20th Street and north to 31st Street, with 6th Avenue and Park Avenue South respectively serving as our general west and east borders. This nearly doubles the size of today's district, including an additional 1,384 expansion area properties, of which 344 are commercial in nature. The expansion offers bid programs consistent with those provided in the current boundaries: supplemental sanitation, public safety, homeless outreach, streetscape planning and beautification, retail marketing, advocacy, and maintenance of the improvements we install. Underwriting these services is a proposed $6 million per year assessment budget for the fully expanded bid area, and we are proposing a large mixed-use building assessment class to more equitably integrate income-producing owners of residential towers that contribute to greater pedestrian density and curb congestion. Across a multi-year community engagement process, the steering committee has completed needs assessment surveys, door-to-door ground floor canvassing, condo and co-op board meetings, social media awareness campaigns, public information sessions, and multiple information mailings to thousands of expansion area addresses. Throughout the pandemic, we've reoriented this outreach to also include business advocacy and support services to demonstrate our value and commitment to the neighborhood's resiliency and recovery. These collective efforts have been widely embraced by expansion stakeholders. To date, we have received written support from 56% of total commercial assessed value.
Mr. Metham, I'm afraid that the time is up, so I'll turn it over now to questions from commissioners. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, good morning, James. I appreciate your feedback and the discussion around the impact that the bid has on your property owners, and in this case, the residential property owners. Could you speak to, I guess for the record, the kinds of activities and policies, interventions that your bid advances that impact residential residents in your community? I think it would be important to sort of share that for our understanding.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. Yeah, so, beyond the meat and potatoes of, bid services, which include additional sanitation and cleaning services on a daily basis, the placement of our public safety ambassadors who are there to address quality of life issues and just lend a helpful hand when issues do arise. We're also, we pride ourselves on providing greening and landscape services throughout the district to make sure that the area looks and feels its best at all times. That's something we've prided ourselves on. It's also been a focus in terms of the public realm, in terms of public plazas, of which we manage two very iconic plazas adjacent to and across the street from the Flatiron building, which serves as somewhat of a neighborhood vestibule or living room of sorts, where we provide community programming and activities in good times, particularly normal times, to the community to allow them to enjoy what our businesses and cultural institutions are providing inside and bringing them outside to the public. In addition to that, we spend a good amount of time also educating our neighborhood on working with and supporting our individuals that are without shelter, or homeless individuals. We've had an outreach program in place for the past 10 years, making sure that we are establishing relationships with individuals that are living outdoors and in hopes of providing them with support and services and housing ultimately, if and when they choose to take advantage of that. And then of course, it's a community dialogue, we're not only a clearinghouse for local economic information, but we also serve as a forum for issues that do arise or opportunities that arise for the betterment of the greater Flatiron and Nomad neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us of normal times, Mr. Metham.
Hopefully coming back.
Not seeing other raised hands from the commissioners, we'll thank you for your testimony and move on to Jordan Barowitz.
Mr. Barowitz is not in the room. And we reached out, but weren't able to get hold of him.
Okay, then we will move on to Mario Messina.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the fellow commissioners. I'm Mario Messina, one of the founders and president of the 29th Street Neighborhood Association. I represent 347 members of the association, primarily residents and some small business owners. I am also a longtime resident and co-op owner at 425 Park Avenue South. I can safely say that we are all excited about the prospect of the bid expansion. As a matter of fact, we have been asking for this expansion for the past 7 or 8 years. We are welcoming with enthusiasm this expansion because we know, since we are witnessing, especially in this difficult moment, how important are the services provided by the bid in promoting a better quality of life. You can see the difference between the area serviced by the bid and the areas that is not. The area serviced by the bid is cleaner, greener, free of graffiti, and it is safer without panhandlers and drug dealers. They also have an excellent outreach program for the homeless, and that is very much needed, especially in these days. We are looking forward to this expansion and to the benefit of improved quality of life, very much needed in our neighborhood. And we thank you very much for hopefully approve this. Thank you for the opportunity given me this afternoon to testify.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Messina? Thank you for testifying. At this point, I'll note that we're coming close to the end of the speakers who've registered. If you haven't registered but would like to speak, now would be the time, and you can find instructions on how to register, whether online or via phone, at www.nyc.gov/NYCengage. Our next speaker will be Michael Beirut.
Thank you, Chair Lago. Thank you, commissioners. I work at Pentagram, which is a business at 250 Park Avenue South on the south side of 20th Street. I've been a partner and owner at Pentagram for nearly 30 years, and I want to encourage you to support the expansion of the Flatiron 23rd Street Partnership District borders. A little history. Pentagram's first office was on the 17th floor of 212 Fifth Avenue, the corner of 26th Street. We started there in 1980 with less than a dozen people. By the end of the decade, we tripled in size, began looking for a new home. We found it just a few doors down to the south of that same block in a 4-story former bank turned shuttered nightclub at 204 Fifth. The neighborhood back then, you might remember, was not great, dirty, dangerous, dark after business hours, abandoned on weekends, risky to take a shortcut across Madison Square Park. Yet we thrived there, and soon our neighborhood will be thriving too, thanks in large part to a new organization called the Flatiron 23rd Street Partnership. As business owners and eventually landlords, we bought that building. We joined this coalition early, and full disclosure, we supported the partnership with the design of its logo, help with annual reports and stuff, all for a reduced nonprofit rate. The partnership saw results from the start: cleaner sidewalks, safer streets, diverse and vibrant retail. What was once a nameless area turned into a destination. And from our perch overlooking what had suddenly, seemingly, mysteriously, miraculously become a beautiful park, we viewed that transformation with wonder and satisfaction. Then we tripled in size again. The building we occupied couldn't hold us. Reluctantly, with great internal debate, we decided to move, looked all over the city and Brooklyn, but inevitably found ourselves drawn back to the area we knew and loved. So with much happiness, we signed a lease, beautiful space, top 2 floors at 250 Park Avenue South. Our new home is perfect in almost every way but one. It is just barely outside the borders of the Flatiron Partnership District. We still get the benefit of the partnership's work, just steps away from our side door, but we miss being an active participant. So now we've got an opportunity to extend the boundaries of the district to include our address and many of the wonderful homes, businesses, stores, and restaurants that surround us. I take our word for it. There's nothing better than being part of a great neighborhood. We'd love to officially be part of it again. Please consider this proposal favorably. And we are really looking forward to getting back into our office later this year and enjoying what we have come to see as a neighborhood we love above all. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beirut. I'll just note for the commission that I've noticed a corner turned in the testimony, perhaps with the arrival of the vaccines, that we now are daring to let ourselves think about the date when we can return to normal, when we can get back to our offices where life is as it should be. With that, I'll see if there are any questions. Commissioner Burney.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Michael. I just wanted to comment and note that the the Flatiron Bids website could use a little bit of a brush up, so you might want to chip in there and use your extensive talents to help them along.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. The point taken, and I'll pass it on to James Metham when I see him next.
Seeing no other questions, well, thank you, Mr. Beirut, and move on to Hirsch Narola.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Oh, great. Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lago and fellow commissioners. My name is Hirsch Narola. My wife and I own and operate Bombay Sandwich Co., a vegan and vegetarian fast casual restaurant located at 48 West 27th Street in the proposed expansion bid area. I appreciate the opportunity to provide my support for the proposal today. We started our business in 2012 at Brooklyn Smorgasburg, and then in 2014, opened our first brick and mortar location in Nomad neighborhood. We chose this location due to its proximity to the busy 6th Avenue corridor, as well as the large number of office workers and nearby transportation hubs. 48 West 27th Street lays just outside the area currently served by the Flatiron Bid, between Broadway and 6th Avenue. The blocks near us receive additional cleaning and maintenance and other services, including graffiti removal, planted tree pits and flower baskets, and colorful banners sponsored by local businesses. Our block, and particularly 6th Avenue, would be transformed with the bid's services, and I firmly believe we would benefit from increased foot traffic. We also chose the location for the cafe as it directly abuts a privately owned public space, Pops. The Pops is currently being renovated, and we're aware that the Flatiron Bid successfully maintains and manages the Flatiron public plazas. There may be future opportunities to collaborate with the bid and property owner to activate the space for positive community use if the bid expansion is granted. We believe the proposed assessment is but a small price to pay for the services that will be provided by the Flatiron Bid, not only for our block of the West 27th Street, but also 6th Avenue and the entire expansion area. The bid will be instrumental in helping cultivate safe, inviting surroundings to welcome much needed foot traffic back to the neighborhood that will keep us and other ground floor businesses open post-COVID. Though we're not yet officially part of the bid, they have included our business in the online takeout and delivery guide and published a Meet Bombay feature in their website last October that was also included in their newsletter to 10,000 plus subscribers. I think much of everything has been mentioned. Our support stays with the proposed Flatiron Bid expansion. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Mr. Narola. Out of curiosity, has Bombay Sandwich been able to take advantage of the open restaurants program?
Yes, we have. We were open, and we saw a great increase in traffic with the outdoor seating. However, with the winter days arriving, we weren't able to upkeep the outdoor seating, so we're currently closed, but we plan to reopen in spring when the weather gets better.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Well, then again, thank you. It is always so helpful to hear from small business owners who take time from their days to testify. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, my pleasure.
Ryan, are there others who have registered to speak?
I will say that we've got Mr. Borowitz back in the room.
Oh, great.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jordan Borowitz, and I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs at the Durst Organization. We own 855 Avenue of the Americas at 31st Street, which is within the boundaries of the expanded bid. 855 is a true mixed-use building. It's comprised of 55,000 square feet of retail, 120,000 square feet of office space, and 375 renter units, of which 25% are income restricted and reserved for people earning a fraction of New York's AMI. 855 is part of the large mixed-use assessment class and will pay an assessment on its commercial and residential square footage. We believe mixed-use buildings benefit from the services for the bid and support contributing to the much-needed supplemental services along the 6th Avenue via the bid assessment. We have heard concerns that assessments on residential spaces will translate into increases in rents. Bid assessments will be absorbed by the building owner, not the tenants. This will happen for two reasons. All units, even the market rate units built under the 421A program, are rent stabilized, and all rents increases are governed by the Rent Guidelines Board. Even if a unit is not rent stabilized, rents are determined by the demand for apartments, not expenses. Case in point, Manhattan rents are down 17.3% year over year, despite an increase in taxes, insurance costs, and other operating expenses related to COVID. Additionally, the proposed bid expansion area is at the nexus of Nomad, Midtown South, and Flatiron. It is heavily trafficked and mixed-use district with large office, residential, and retail corridors that attract many visitors, including a considerable population of non-domiciled individuals. The proposed expansion area strains under the burden of the need for increased sanitation and homeless outreach and advocacy. The expanded bid will improve the streetscape, make residents and visitors safer, and increase the services from those suffering from addiction and mental health challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking with us and joining back in. Questions from the commission? Thank you, Mr. Barowitz.
My pleasure.
And again, Ryan, anyone else who has signed up?
No further speakers on item 31.
Okay, so this public hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 32 and 33. CD6, calendar number 32. C200178ZMQ, calendar number 33. N200179ZRQ. A public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 91-32 63rd Drive rezoning.
Our first speaker will be Frank St. Jacques.
Madam Chair, I'm recused in this matter.
Thanks so much, Commissioner Ramprashad.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Frank St. Jacques with Ackerman LLP for the applicant. Members of the project team will be available for questions after this brief presentation. Next slide, please. The area was zoned in 1961 with an R4 zoning district and a C22 commercial overlay that has remained in place over the last 60 years. The adjacent zoning district to the east is a mid-density R71 non-contextual zoning district. Next slide, please. The surrounding area is characterized primarily by multifamily residential use with commercial uses along 63rd Drive and Queens Boulevard to the north. The area has access to several bus lines, and the MR 63rd Drive Rego Park subway station is 4 blocks to the north. Next slide, please. Other details to note are that 63rd Drive is a wide street, and the elevated tracks of the Long Island Railroad main line are located directly south of the site. The Long Island Railroad right-of-way creates open space to the south of the development site. Next slide, please. The 13,731 square foot development site has 140 feet of frontage on 63rd Drive and 100 feet of frontage on Austin Street. Next slide. Here you can see some of the multifamily residential context surrounding the development site, which is unimproved and vacant. Next slide, please. The proposed R7A C23 district would promote the production of new housing and Community District 6, which has a low vacancy rate, and the majority of the housing stock was built before 1970. The proposed rezoning would facilitate new residential development with the provision of permanently income-restricted housing on underutilized land on a wide street near mass transit. The proposed R7A allows comparable bulk to the adjacent R71 zoning district, but with the predictability of the contextual envelope. Next slide, please. Project details are shown here. Approximately 21 permanently income-restricted units will be provided. In response to a request from Community Board 6, the applicant has agreed to provide 2 income bands at 60% AMI, resulting in 14 of the 21 units at low income levels under MIH option 2. The applicant's goal is to maximize the amount of permanently income restricted housing with this development. Next slide, please. The ground floor commercial space in the proposed development shown in these illustrative renderings would likely be divided for local retail and service type uses to serve the surrounding residential neighborhood. The applicant's intent is to find tenants that are consistent with the uses found along 63rd Drive, which are more locally oriented than the uses found along nearby Queens Boulevard. These local uses include eating and drinking establishments, pharmacies, salons, retail shops, cleaners, grocers, among others. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, sorry, somehow my raised hand thing has disappeared in the midst of the hearing. We've got Zoom weirdness. Anyway, Mr. St. Jack, I wonder if you could take us through an understanding of the affordability program for this building. I think when it was certified, you intended, it was described as including an heirs component. I see that that has been dropped. And the information we have suggests that the applicant is planning to build pursuant to option 2, but has nonetheless agreed with the community board, as you said at the end of your testimony, to deeper affordability to a certain extent. I'm wondering why, whether there was any consideration given to building the entire project under option 1. And I realize along the way, just for point of clarification, our briefing materials refer to, well, all kinds of different numbers of affordable units, 24 units, you ended up saying it was 21 units. So if you could get us straightened out on the numbers and then the rationale for the affordability levels that you are currently targeting.
Yes, Commissioner Levin, I'm happy to walk through all of those details. So this project was initially filed and intended to utilize the HPD's heirs program to provide heirs units under the privately financed the PFAS program. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the full name. We just learned, I guess a couple of weeks ago, that program will be rescinded by HPD. Unless we're able to convince HPD otherwise, that this project just simply won't be eligible for that term sheet due to the deadlines that have been set. So we've removed that element from the project in this presentation. So I think that's why you're seeing some discrepancies with respect to the numbers.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. So originally with the heirs program, there were more units and thus more MIH units, because the heirs units were intended to satisfy that MIH component.
I got it.
We would love to be able to provide heirs, and that was a part of this development that was contemplated for several years until I believe it was just before the end of the year that HPD made that announcement. So we're holding out hope that we can find a way to maybe grandfather this project, but absent that, the MIH units originally proposed was about 24, and that's been reduced to 21 with the slightly lower FAR that's provided with a straight R7A without that heirs FAR bonus. With respect to the affordability, the applicant has, you described this correctly, opted for MIH option 1, MIH option 2, and has agreed in response to Community District 6's request for deeper levels of affordability to provide 2 of the 3 income bands at 60% AMI. That results in 14 of the 21 MIH units at 60% AMI. And MIH option 2 was contemplated really for 3 reasons. The first being the higher median household income in Community District 6. The second is that MIH option 2 results in more permanently income restricted units, here 21 versus about 18. And finally, the community board and borough president both recommended approval of this application with the proposed MIH option 2. We believe that this option is appropriate in a community district that does have these higher income levels in comparison to Queens overall in the city.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I see you also are asking for a change from the C22 commercial overlay to a C23. Is that based on some change of commercial usage? I was just wondering what was the rationale for that.
No, so the uses remain the same. The uses don't change, and the range of uses that are permitted don't change, but the parking requirement is slightly lower in the C23. And we believe just based on the availability of mass transit surrounding this site that a reduction in parking is appropriate here. We believe that most visitors to the intended commercial uses would be local users arriving by foot or by bicycle or mass transit rather than by car.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delauze.
I'm just kind of following up on the, excuse me, on the MIH conversation. One second. First off, I appreciate the applicant's flexibility to look at the AMI levels and try to address the community's concerns and do so while at the same time keeping the overall percentage of the units in the project at the AMI, I'm sorry, MIH option 2, so at 30% of the units versus 25. I'm just wondering how is the commitment to keep 14 of the 21 units at 60% of AMI being memorialized? And is this something the applicant is committing to in perpetuity?
So this is a good question, and ultimately the commitment would be memorialized in the mandatory inclusionary housing restrictive declaration that would be required to be prepared with HPD prior to pulling building permits for the site. This is contemplated in perpetuity.
It's a creative solution.
Thank you. We think that it's responsive to the community board's request, and we're hoping that it works moving forward.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. St. Jacques, if I understand correctly, you have other members of the team there available for questions. David Koptiev, Stephen Sinakori, Warren Sauberman, and Lauren George.
Yes, Madam Chair, and really, if there are no direct questions for those project team members, they'll happily waive their time.
Okay, I will check to see if commissioners have additional questions. Seeing none, I will ask Ryan if anyone else has signed up to speak on this matter.
Let me check the team here. And no, there have no other speakers on items 32 and 33.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 34 and 35, CD2, calendar number 34, C200243 CMQ, calendar number 35, N200244 ZRQ. A public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 50-25 Barnett Avenue rezoning.
We're going to have a 10-minute presentation by an applicant team comprised of Sarah Elmore, Michael Wadman, Kathy Pennington, Douglas Hanau, Herb Mandel, and John McNally.
Hey, good afternoon, commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, and before you begin, if we could ask production to mute folks, since we're getting background noise. Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Elmore.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon. We're here today to discuss a proposal for a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment to facilitate the development of a new mixed-use development containing affordable housing and community facility space at 5025 Barnett Avenue. Next slide, please. The proposed land use actions to facilitate the proposed development consist of a zoning map amendment to rezone the project site from M11 to R6A, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area at the project site. And we are proposing option 1. The application was certified as complete and entered ULURP on October 5th. It was Queens Community Board Vote 2 voted to approve 28-13 with conditions on December 3rd, 2020. And Queensborough President recommended approval on January 6, 2021 with conditions. Next slide, please. The proposed project site is located in Sunnyside neighborhood in Community District 2 in Queens, on a block that is bounded by the Long Island Railroad right-of-way to the north, the prolongation of 52nd Street to the east, Barnett Avenue to the south, and the prolongation of 50th Street to the west. The site is currently zoned M11, which permits light industrial uses and community facility uses, but does not permit residential uses. The areas to the south of the project site are residential. Next slide, please. The proposed project site is currently occupied by a surface parking lot with approximately 223 parking spaces. The site is fenced off, has no sidewalk or active uses, and results in a streetscape that is uninviting and not friendly to the pedestrians. Next slide, please. The proposed development will consist of a mixed-use building with approximately 167 affordable housing units, approximately 5,300 square feet of community facility space, and the building will rise to a height of 6 stories on the eastern and westernmost ends and up to an overall maximum height of 7 stories. The proposed development will also have 170 parking spaces, of which 111 would be made available for public use. A 15-foot wide sidewalk with plantings and a double corridor of trees would also be provided in connection with the proposed development to make the street more inviting and pedestrian friendly. Next slide, please. The unit distribution of the proposed development will consist of a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And the affordability levels will be as follows. 15% of the units will be affordable to 40% of AMI formerly homeless, another 15% affordable to 50% of AMI, another 15% affordable to 60% of AMI, another 15% available to 70% of AMI, and 40% available to households earning 90% of AMI. Next slide, please. And in response to feedback received during the public review process, we have proposed deeper affordability levels. When certified, there was an income band of 110% of AMI proposed. We have eliminated that income band and increased the 90% of AMI income band and added a 70% of AMI income band. Next slide, please. And Michael Wadman will take over these slides.
Hello, thank you, Sarah. Can everybody hear me as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here this afternoon. The slide in front of you is the floor plan. And the main purpose of this is to show the large community facility space, which is the left third or so of the building. We'll be seeking a local partner, a nonprofit group, to provide some form of service in that area. The center area shows you the main lobby and plaza area to enter the building. And the area on the right shows you several masonette apartments where residents will have front yards, which will be great for them, but also will provide much better street presence. Next slide, please. This is the second floor. And the main illustrative goal here is the middle section. You see that there's a recreation terrace that extends from the back of the building all the way to the property line. And all of the rooms immediately adjacent to that are amenity areas, including a lounge, fitness room, kids room, and laundry. Next slide, please. This is the remaining typical floor plan, just showing you that once you move above that second floor, the space is entirely dedicated to affordable housing units. Next slide. This is a very preliminary rendering of what that outdoor space would look like. It's quite large, so will allow for playground type of use as well as passive recreation and other types of amenities for the residents. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the building looking northwest, showing you the plaza area there in the middle. On the far right, the masonettes with front yards that I mentioned, and on the far left, the streetscape in front of the community facility space. Next slide. This is blown up perspective of the plaza Adjacent to the lobby, the canopy there is the entrance to the building and shows some of the landscaping and streetscaping improvements as well. Next slide. This is the picture you've already seen of what the street looks like now. Next slide. And this is the proposed building superimposed over that street, showing the consistent height with the existing Sunnyside Garden Apartments building across the street, which is also owned by Phipps. Next slide. I think some of the main elements that we're proud of what we've accomplished here are really listening to the community board from our last time presenting this project several years ago. That's where the reduced height comes from, the increased amount of community facility space, the amount of parking available on site has been increased, the affordability levels have been increased, and we've also signed a development agreement with 32BJ for unionized maintenance staff. Next slide. As Sarah walked you through, there's a pretty dramatic deepening of affordability, particularly compared to the 2016 proposal, where we had primarily middle income development, and the current project, which is 60% low incomes of various ranges and 40% at a 90% moderate income range. Next slide. For the rest of the presentation, the head of Phipps's property management group, Kathy Pennington, will talk about improvements we've made to the project, as well as the improvement plan that we've agreed to with the community board and the residents. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for your time. This chart is just showing the level of improvements to the properties that we have completed over the past 4 years. I would highlight that we did roof replacement and masonry work over a 3-year period. We have done outdoor upgrades in landscaping, elevator cab renovation, public space painting, etc., to maintain and improve the quality of the property. The next slide. In response to concerns raised by the Sunnyside Tenant Association, we have agreed to an improvement plan to address some of the issues that they have raised, which include increasing staffing at the property. We have already hired 2 new porters that will be starting over the next few weeks, and we've agreed to several areas in the custodial area to improve as far as public space maintenance, extermination. We've agreed to do annual surveys to assess tenant satisfaction with services at the property, and we will continue our annual apartment inspections. Again, this was all part of multiple discussions with the Tenant Association, who brought forward areas of concern, and Phipps is 100% committed to improving delivery of services at our property at Sunnyside. Thank you.
Is that the end of the presentation?
Yes, Sarah?
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Commission, for your time, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner De La Hoz.
First, I just want to acknowledge the work that the Phipps team put in to come back with this new and improved, if you will, proposal for the community, and for being responsive to the residents' needs in their existing property. The recommendations that we received both from the community board and the borough president, I want to say, talked about the memorialization of the commitments to the existing tenants, and I'm just wondering if Phipps staff can speak to that and how that's being tracked and then shared with the existing residents.
Sure. We have a finalized version of what is being called the Sunnyside Garden Apartments Improvement Plan that Kathy provided an overview of. It is a document that was shared with the community board and borough presidents and elected officials. And we are committed to providing and have been providing regular updates. Most recently, we provided an update on January 12th, so just about a week ago. The document itself was finalized after conversations with the Tenants Association at Sunnyside Garden Apartments. It was finalized on December 21st and circulated on the 22nd of December to the community board and elected officials.
Great. So your hope, I assume, is to have that finalized. Is the idea to have it finalized before the city council vote?
The document itself is finalized. There are certain portions of the plan that have timeline goals, so 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. So we already provided an update that has most of the 30-day responses to the community board and the elected officials just this past week. And we will continue to provide updates to show the plans, but the document itself is finalized. We also do have regular meetings scheduled with the Tenants Association, with the first of which is tomorrow or the next day. If you could confirm, Kathy, which day that is. I think it's Friday, actually.
It's this Friday, yes. We have our next association meeting on Friday.
Okay, great. Great, thanks for that update. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Rompershot.
Actually, Commissioner Bellew has asked the question I was going to ask, so thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing other questions, I will thank the applicant team, and I'll note that we'll follow our standard procedure of starting with 5 speakers in opposition, then speakers in support until all speakers have been heard, beginning with Deborah Farley.
Hi, my name is Deborah Farley. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Farley.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I strongly oppose the rezoning. There is not broad-based community support that is being represented. Secondly, the FIPS has an atrocious track record for management and maintenance. And I know that they just gave a very glowing presentation, but I can tell you that I have submitted, and so have many of the people on our team and our committee, extensive documentation that will demonstrate that, you know, what is being presented is not the case. And I realize that when we take a look at development, vertical development going up and down, at some point people come out of buildings. And Sunnyside is quickly becoming a very overutilized area. I just would like to cite one example. If you pre-pandemic wanted to get on the number 7 train, you could be standing on the platform for 15 or 20 minutes because there are so many people that are moving into the area. The number 7 train can't accommodate people. People are having to take Lyfts and Ubers. So part of my concern is just moving people in en masse into the neighborhood when you have resources that are already exhausted and overutilized. We all have to live with the repercussions of this development afterwards. There are units that are properly available in the FIPS housing that tenants that live there say that these apartments are just vacated and being warehoused. So if there really was a genuine concern for providing affordable housing, why aren't these units being used now? As a matter of fact, since the pandemic, there's like close to 20,000 empty apartments in the city. Why aren't we using those to give people housing units to live in? Why aren't we using the resources that are already here? And as you stated earlier, vaccines are available. We're still in a pandemic. We have a neighborhood that is stressed out. We've lost neighbors, we've lost small businesses. And I think it is totally unethical, immoral to ask a community suffering under the hardships that we currently are to even think about planning a construction which will provide so many hardships, traffic issues, environmental concerns, safety issues for people. We need a recovery plan for our community. We need our community to get back up on its feet before we think about adding any more people, before we think about exhausting our resources further than they already have. So I please ask you to review what we have submitted as a group and to please consider that this is not a hardship that we should be asked to be absorbed.
Thank you, Ms. Farley. Questions for Ms. Farley? Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Ms. Farley, for your testimony. I was just curious, do you live near this proposed project, or do you live in Sunnyside Gardens?
I live in Sunnyside Gardens for almost 70 years. I live a few
70
blocks.
years.
I live a few blocks away from there. So I have lived here long enough to understand that it may look really glamorous to put up a nice building, but we all have to live through that construction. And then how are all of these additional bodies going to be accommodated afterwards? And those are not things that developers don't think about that. They just build and then they go. And then the rest of us will live there.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, just so we can keep an eye out for the materials from your group, Ms. Farley. What's the name of your group?
I think everybody sort of sent their stuff in, like Herb Reynolds sent something in from Sunnyside Alliance. I sent something in.
Okay, so, all right, so there's no organizational name we should be watching out for.
A committee of 25 of us and we're all working together.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Again, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Farley. We'll move on to Denise Kean Smith.
Good afternoon, Chair Lago and Commissioners. I'm speaking today in opposition to the FIPS rezoning located at 5025 Barnett Avenue, and I implore the CPC to pause this ULURP process. When the FIPS rezoning was first presented 4 years ago, I was serving as chairwoman of Community Board 2 Queens. The neighborhood was very vocal about their opposition to the application, and we ensured them an opportunity to express their opinion in a public forum, provided clear instructions for submitting written testimony and general guidance in escalating their concerns to the decision makers involved in the ULURP process. At that time, FIPS residents were able to plead their case regarding the deplorable conditions at the current FIPS Garden Apartments, the lack of infrastructure improvements, and the general concern of moving people into a building that abuts the Long Island Railroad were never addressed. The AMI bans are still now not lowered to acceptable levels. The application was opposed by CB2 and former Queensborough President Melinda Katz. FIPS then unexpectedly and inexplicably withdrew the application just before the vote in the City Council was about to take place. That was 4 years ago. Today, FIPS is once again coming forward in an attempt to push this application through expeditiously, knowing none of the previous neighborhood concerns were addressed. Why did the applicant wait several years before beginning this process and are now rushing this through? There's a sense of urgency which is unnecessary. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are experiencing a very different ULURP process. Community Board 2 meetings are held online via Zoom or WebEx. Non-board members are not entitled to speak unless they are unmuted by the host. Seniors often join the meeting by phone only and have been ignored during the public comment period. In fact, one board member who does not have computer access was ignored when she voted no to the project. It wasn't until weeks later that the final vote was changed from 28-12 to 28-13 in the official record. Community Board 2 then failed to provide adequate notice about the Queensborough president hearing 2 weeks later. I happened to contact the office and learned the meeting was being held that very same morning. Community residents did not have ample time to submit testimony nor join the hearing online. Yet 2 new board members unfamiliar with the complexities of this application were notified and spoke in favor. The same holds true for this meeting being held on this historic inauguration day of our great country. Seniors and those without the resources to afford computers are not being given a voice. I believe this is discriminatory and represents a clear systemic failure of this ULURP process. I respectfully request that the ULURP process—
Thank you, Ms. Kean Smith. I'm afraid that your time is up. Thank you for coming to testify today. And I'll now ask if any commissioners have questions. Again, thank you for your testimony. Oh, Commissioner Marin, I see that your hand is raised.
Commissioner Marin, we're not hearing you.
I'm on now.
Yes.
I am unmuted. Okay, good. Ma'am, I have a question, just very simple question. Is it the development, is it any development that would go there bothering you, or is it the fact that there are two issues, one of which you feel you have not been heard, and the other you feel that Phipps is not a responsible management company? I'd like to parse that out a little bit further and try to understand the desire to not have a development here. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, I don't like the location. I don't like the impact that it will have to the community. I don't like the fact that 4 years ago, all of these issues regarding the conditions of the building were laid out in a very clear manner. At that time, Phipps promised that they would improve the conditions. They would create a timeline in which those issues would be addressed. That was 4 years ago. It was only within the last 6 or 7 months that this issue was coming before the going through the ULURP process again, that Phipps has begun to take action. As you just heard, you asked the question of one of the management teams. They're having one of their first meetings just this coming Friday. This went before the community board in December. They should have met. They should have created a plan in which they were going to improve the conditions. That has not been done.
When you say you improve the conditions, you're talking about specifically the buildings that you're living in, not the conditions of the lot that they're looking to develop.
Well, that's correct, but there also are conditions with there's also environmental issues with the condition of the lot that they're looking to build.
Understood. That I understand. I was just trying to parse out the lot from the existing properties which you guys live in, which Phipps also manages. Thank you. I appreciate your response, ma'am.
And again, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Kean Smith. We'll now move on to Brent O'Leary.
Mr. O'Leary does not appear to be in the room.
Okay, then Gerald Perrin.
Mr. Perrin, you should be able to unmute. There we go.
Unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
I am speaking to oppose Phipps's rezoning application. Phipps Sunnyside Garden Apartments, across the street from the proposed site, has been my home for all of my 86 years. I am the longest living tenant in the complex, as well as a founder and co-president of the Tenant Association. As such, I have seen Phipps as the good landlord that it used to be, and as the current landlord that has let the property decline to its current state of disrepair and uncleanliness. The on-site staffing has been systematically reduced from 25 people in 1931 at the beginning to 17 people in 2009, and now to 12 in 2020. That's more than a 50% reduction. The result has been a serious decline in the upkeep and repair of the building's physical infrastructure, the cleanliness of all public areas and outside grounds, and a dramatic deterioration in the once beautiful gardens. When Phipps applied for the rezoning change in 2016, from a previous version of their current proposal, they promised these problems referred to above would be remedied. That has not happened. The Tenant Association has had very much the same list of complaints for many years. We have a file of over 50 disturbing photos of these conditions as of late 2020. When Phipps heard that their complex would be toured by the city councilman and the community board members of Community Board 2 before their rezoning vote, They rushed extra personnel over to clean up the property as much as they could before the tour. In 2016, during the Phipps's earlier rezoning application, I collected over 400 signatures. That is 80% of the tenants opposed the rezoning because of Phipps's poor management. Today, things have not changed for the better. I strongly believe that Phipps should not be granted the rezoning request in light of their failure to be a proper custodian of the existing Sunnyside Gardens Apartments complex. Why should we expect them to behave differently at a new site directly across the street from our own? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Mr. Perrin, first, congratulations on your very long tenure in one place. There are very few New Yorkers who are able to manage such a feat, and I hope it endures. Just for clarification, I think you described yourself as a founder of the Tenants Association and co-president. Are you currently involved with the Tenants Association?
Yes, I'm currently co-president.
Okay, and so we've been described, the Sunnyside Garden Apartments Improvement Plan has been described to us by the Phipps team as having been agreed. I assumed it was with the Tenants Association. Is that not correct?
They did consult with the Tenants Association, but your wording of having been agreed is not quite correct. The Kathy Pennington, who gave that presentation, said the agreement has been finalized. There are things that we did not agree to that have not been put in there, and we expressed our disagreement with it, but it was delivered to us as a final. There was some back and forth before that, but there was still a difference of opinion on some things before it was finalized, but we did not agree to that finalized version.
So will there be continued discussions between the Tenants Association and Phipps before we get to the end of this ULURP?
Well, yes, there's supposed to be meetings every month. That's one of the conditions of that were put into the agreement to the proposal by the community board.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our major issues are on this staffing, which, as I said, had been reduced from what it was originally granted many, many years ago, but even in recent years has been reduced very significantly. And the type of people that you can't outsource work to, I mean, you can do painting with outside painters, but you cannot replace handymen and porters by outside sourcing. So the reductions in those areas are what we disagreed with. And in the presentation you just heard, but might not have noticed, the number of porters was stated that they just recently, in recent weeks, hired 2. Well, we don't know about that yet. One of them was for somebody who just retired, and the other one was, in fact, one new proposal for 1 additional porter. At the same time, they reduced the staffing for a handyman, which is another kind of work that can't be done outsourced. So in effect, we got a net amount change of 0, a +1 and a -1.
Okay, well, so thank you for that clarification. I think it's all the more important that Ms. Pennington indicated there would be a meeting with the Tenants Association on Friday. I know that this commission will be interested in understanding how close you are to reaching an agreement, certainly as the time approaches when we have to vote. So I would urge the Phipps team to keep us advised, and the Tenants Association to continue to provide us with additional information between now and the time we have to vote on this.
Well, you might want to note one other point. The things that are supposed to be done in this improvement plan, some of them are 30 days, some are 60, some are 90, some are out to a year. So it's not going to be possible to say everything's been done the way this process is moving along.
Right. Well, it's not our business to lay out what those items are, but I think we would be interested in knowing that progress is being made to a solution that is satisfactory to all.
Thank you. And now we'll turn to Commissioner Delauze.
Kind of following up on the question to Mr. O'Leary, I'm just wondering if the Tenants Association is represented by legal counsel.
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you. And thank you for.
We haven't been using the council in any of these negotiations with FIPS on this improvement plan. We have used outside counsel to sue FIPS for some of the improvements that looked so wonderful in that presentation of fixing things and what they called new improvements was the result of 10 years of effort to get them to replace very, very badly leaking roofs and parapets, which took them 10 years to do. They finished that in 2019, and that's a major part of what they're calling an improvement. I call it a repair.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. We'll now move on to Margaret Perrin.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you're welcome to testify.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity. I haven't lived here for 86 years because I'm not that old, but I have lived here for 61 years. And I must say that I believe very strongly that this is a bad resolution. If anything should happen positively as a result of FIPS's request for rezoning, it should be to say, FIPS, Houses New York, you must fix FIPS garden apartments before we let you do anything else. You are untrustworthy. In 2016, we had major problems. In 2020, we have greater problems. They have done nothing for us. Why would you let them to build anything until they have shown themselves trustworthy? At any rate, I must tell you that Phipps Garden Apartments is an award-winning garden apartment development. The gardens are shabby. The houses, apartments, 29 number apartments, six buildings are elevator buildings, 29 are 4-story walk-ups. Our minimal staff must carry the burden for keeping that property clean. I don't think this problem has to do with affordable housing. Phipps is affordable housing. It was built in the early 1930s for working families by a philanthropist, Mr. Phipps. And I don't see that Phipps, New York, is a Mr. Phipps at all. We need what we were given to begin with. And I think you folks have to say, show us, put up, or don't bother. And I think my councilman who heard the first request in 2016 and rejected it should have rejected it this time around too, because he has to admit there were no improvements. He came and saw them himself, and we have photographic evidence that place is in need of dire improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Perrin. Questions from the commission? Okay, again, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
I'll note that we are getting near to the end of this hearing. And if you haven't registered to speak, but have decided during the course of the hearing that you would like to, please register now. And you can find instructions on how to register, whether via phone or online, at www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage. Our next speaker is Sam Salmon.
Mr. Salmon is no longer in the room.
Okay, then we will move to Mark Espinoza.
Hello, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Awesome, fantastic. Good afternoon, Chair Lago and members of the commission again. My name is Mark Anthony Espinoza. I've been a member of 32BJ for 13 years, and I am here on behalf of the 85,000 building service workers of 32BJ represents in New York City to express our support for this rezoning. We are pleased that the developer for this project, Phipps Houses, has made a credible commitment to the prevailing wage for the future building workers at this site. This new development will bring new good jobs and permanently affordable housing to Queens in a time when we need them most. Providing apartments at a range of prices for low income and working class families. As we move forward from this pandemic and economic crisis, it's imperative to rebuilding New York City. This affordable housing and commitment to good prevailing wage jobs will give opportunity for upward mobility, security, and dignity to working class families. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. 32BJ has more than 3,000 members who live or work in Community District 2. We know that this development will continue to uphold the industry standard and provide opportunities for working families to thrive in Sunnyside. On behalf of 32BJ SEIU, I respectfully urge you to approve this project.
Thank you, Mr. Espinoza. Questions? Again, thank you.
Thank you.
And I will now go back and call the names of those who had registered but were not in the room at the time. Thomas Muccioli,
Yes, Mr. Muccioli is in the room.
please go ahead.
Mr. Muccioli, you should be able to speak. We've unmuted you. There we go.
Great. Hi there. I am a resident at Phipps Sunnyside Gardens apartment, directly next to where this planned development on Barnett has been proposed. A few things just to echo what Jerry Perrin had said about the repairs to the roofs. We've had leaky roofs. I'm on a top floor apartment in a 4-floor walk-up. We've had leaks in every single room in my apartment. We still do. So again, these were not improvements, but repairs. A few things to note about the development itself. We're again a 4-story building in the back of this building facing where the development is going to be. We are now going to have a 6- and 7-story building, which is going to block sunlight, air quality, from the people who are currently living in Phipps Garden apartments. With that said, as far as the action plan is concerned, I just want to say the porter who recently retired is my building's porter. And he even noted to me personally that there was no person being hired to replace him. All that Phipps did was put up a message saying that they are in the process of rehiring. So in addition to them agreeing to hire a specific porter meant to manage garbage here, which to my knowledge they have not hired yet, they lost a porter and had not hired them. We have tons of people who are out of work because of the pandemic, and the fact that they can't even hire an additional porter, knowing for a long time that this porter in my building was going to retire, just shows you how negligent they are. When they tell us that they are looking at the budget, it seems as though they aren't budgeting for porters. Just a few of the numbers, in 1931, this building had 3 office managers. We now have 1. We had 6 painters then, we now have 2. Porters, 8, we now have 4. There is a real problem with vermin in this place. My apartment, we have roaches. We now have rats running around the property because of the amount of garbage that it's a 472 unit building, 30 buildings. We have a lot of people here. They produce a lot of waste. They leave garbage out in the gardens near the area for recycling, and it's become a real issue. Our park that's right next to us is just overrun with rodents. And while I'm in favor of affordable
Mr.
housing.
Muccioli, I'm afraid that your time has expired. I'll turn it now
Great, thank you.
to the commissioners. Seeing no raised hands, I'll thank you for your testimony and thank you for sticking with us and getting back into the meeting.
Thank you.
And now I'll check to see if Brent O'Leary has rejoined.
No, Mr. O'Leary has not joined.
Okay, and then the final person who had registered was Sam Salmon.
Nope, no, Mr. Salmon is not in the room.
Okay, so my final question on this hearing is whether anyone else has signed up.
No, Madam Chair, no more speakers on count numbers 34 and 35.
So the public hearing on these matters is now closed.
Yep.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 36, CD 13, C200252ZMQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 245-01 Jamaica Avenue rezoning.
First speaker will be the applicant's representative, Fayan Baton.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Fayan Baton from Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. I'm here to discuss the 245-01 Jamaica Avenue rezoning. This is an application for a zoning map amendment to change the existing R4C13 zoning district to an R4C23 zoning district. The underlying R4 zoning district remains the same, while we're just changing the commercial overlay. The zoning map amendment would expand the permitted commercial uses within the project area and would permit the applicant to file a special permit application pursuant to zoning resolution section 7336 at the BSA to legalize a PCE and permit future PCEs at the site. The special permit is currently unavailable under the existing zoning district. Next slide, please. We'll run through the slides quickly. As you can see here, it's the zoning map. The proposed project area is located along Jamaica Avenue, also known as Jericho Turnpike, on the border of Nassau County. As you can see, commercial overlays or commercial districts are also mapped along Jamaica Avenue to the east and west. Next slide, please. The project area consists of block 8659, lot 1. As we see on the tax map, the project area is an approximately 15,513 square foot irregularly shaped lot located between 245th Street and 246th Street. Next slide, please. So Jamaica Avenue is a commercial thoroughfare. Commercial uses are located along the north side of Jamaica Avenue, as well as across the county line. The area is characterized by low density commercial and mixed use buildings along Jamaica Avenue and low density residential districts to the north, including R4, R32, R2A, and R3A zoning districts. The project area is within an R4C13 zoning district, and there's C23 zoning districts located approximately 4 blocks to the east. Next slide, please. This is the proposed zoning map chart, just illustrating what I mentioned. Next slide. We could quickly go through these photographs. As you can see, it's a commercial site in nature, and it's been like that for years. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. Okay, so you could just page through these slides for the plans while I'm talking. Just a little bit about the development. It's an approximately 15,000 square foot commercial building split up into 7 commercial units, including 2 PCE spaces, one that used to be a fitness center pursuant to a BSA variance and former BSA special permits, and a martial arts studio, which the applicant seeks to legalize. The proposed rezoning will help expand commercial uses within the project area, especially during these hard times. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Baton? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, Ms. Baton, I guess the only real concern here that the community board had, and I can't remember about the borough president, I'm taking a look, was about the possibility of seeing a hotel get developed here, because of course that's not what your client is intending here, but it would be one of the possibilities unleashed by this zoning change. What response does your client have to the fears of a hotel at this location, or do you have any brighter solution to this particular issue? Of course, the real solution is to amend the zoning text so that these PCEs don't have to go through this stupid process, but
amen to that.
If you have a way for us to do that in a citywide application, we're all ears. But
understood regarding that.
It seems that there is genuine sympathy and support for what your client is attempting to accomplish here by threading their way through the city bureaucracy. But how are we going to know we're not going to get a hotel?
Understood. So the applicant does not have an intention of selling the building for a hotel. However, we did meet with the community board, and for the community board, we drafted a deed restriction. So we wouldn't allow hotels or homeless shelters on the site. There are some hotels in as of right zoning districts nearby, and that was the community board's concerns. So in response to that, the applicant will be putting a deed restriction on its site, sometime to be recorded after this and before City Council.
Thank you. Well, thank you for reminding me, which I now realize is reflected in the borough president's recommendation. Not anything that we can enforce as a matter of land use, but it certainly demonstrates the good faith of the applicant in this particular case.
And we have the standing for property owners within 1,000 feet of the property.
Thank you.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Ms. Baton.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be David Grossman.
Mr. Grossman's no longer in the room.
Okay, then we will move on to Antonio Marino.
Hello?
Yes, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, no, I'm Antonio Marino's son. We're the owners of the property. We just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the community board and city planning for making this possible for us, especially during these unprecedented times. We're very grateful and appreciate it. Just want to say thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to do that. Appreciate it. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
I just wanted to acknowledge the very gracious response by Mr. Marino to a process that has probably not been very pleasant or very cheap for you to go through to maintain two businesses that have been there for a while. So good on you, and thank you for being complimentary. I'm not sure we deserve it at this point.
Again, thank you, Mr. Marino, and thank you, Commissioner Levin.
Thank you.
I'll check once more to see if David Grossman has re-entered.
No, Mr. Grossman's no longer in the room, not in the room again.
And has anyone else signed up to speak?
Let me just check with the team. No further speakers on calendar numbers 36.
Okay, this public hearing is closed, and we now move on to our final public hearing of the day.
Indeed, Chair Lago, indeed. Borough of Queens, calendar number 37, CD4, C130254, MMQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for a city map amendment concerning the 44th Avenue demapping.
Madam Chair, I am recused in this matter.
Thank you, Commissioner Edie.
Thank you.
Our first speaker is Gail Mondaro from the SCA.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Gail Mandaro, and I'm the Senior Director of Government and Community Relations at the New York City School Construction Authority. I'm here this afternoon to discuss the proposed amendment to the city maps to accommodate the public schools PS 315 and IS 311 that were constructed in 2015 and 2016 respectively. The two schools are located in the Corona community along 4th Avenue between Junction Boulevard and National Street, approximately 6 blocks south to the MTA 7 train line and just north of the Long Island Railroad tracks. The two schools were constructed under the Department of Education's 5-year capital plan for the fiscal years 2010 to 2014 to address the capacity needs identified at the primary and intermediate school levels in District 24, specifically the Corona subdistrict. The schools were constructed in city-owned land, which included part of 44th Avenue on the city maps identified, but never built out as a street. Several other buildings constructed before the schools had also been built within the mapped and undeveloped portions of 44th Avenue. This city map amendment will reconfigure 44th Avenue to remove the street designation from the areas within which the schools and other buildings are located and conform the city maps to the long-standing existing as-built conditions. We are asking for an approval and consent to demap this portion, which should not change any traffic patterns, but will allow the as-built conditions to remain.
Thank you, Ms. Mondaro.
Thank you.
Any questions from the commission?
Pretty straightforward.
I don't see any. And so thanks again for your testimony. I will then ask Ryan if anyone else has turned up to speak on this item.
No, no further speakers have signed up for comment number 37.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, any items on the agenda? Any other items on the agenda? We've certainly had some so far.
No additional items. However, I do have a housekeeping matter I'd like to attend to, if I may. For those of you that were unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal through DCP's webpage or by mailing your comment to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271.
Okay, and with that, we will close this public meeting and let us all go back and start re-celebrating our democracy. Goodbye, all.
Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.
Be well, Michelle.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
All the best.
We miss you, Michelle, already.
Stay in touch. Stay in touch.
Big hugs.